At first, we can see a school with the sun already close to setting. Suddenly, one of the boys there ends up receiving a slap on the back. The one responsible for that is a blonde boy named Chen Yinan, who says that his friend really doesn't know how to wait for his best friend after school. However, the other one says he should have mentioned that the day before, because now he's going to the hospital to visit his mother at this very moment. Understanding this, the boy asks if he can go with him, inviting himself in the process, and our boy agrees but says he'll have to stop by the bank for a moment. The blonde boy asks if the protagonist's mother is okay, to which it's said that the woman has the terrible sleeping sickness. He decides to be honest and says that the chances of her waking up are very low, so it's almost impossible. Soon, Chen realizes that this is one of the diseases spreading around the world, and our boy, on the other hand, as he believes she'll be able to wake up soon. The two then part ways for a moment since the boy in the green shirt was going to the bathroom to take a leak. At the reception, the protagonist says he would like to withdraw at least $6,000 in cash to pay his mother's hospital bill. Suddenly, we see someone suspicious entering the place with one hand in their coat in a strange way. And as he approaches, we can clearly see he's holding a gun at that very moment. Then, drawing it, the old man ends up saying that it's a robbery and no one should move. The lady at the counter freezes and the robber quickly says she must fill the bag with at least $1 million for him. Holding our boy by the neck, the lunatic says that if it's not done quickly, the young man will have his head blown open right there. But behind him, the old man doesn't notice that the protagonist's best friend is already approaching with something in his hands. Then he attacks the robber with a fire extinguisher right in the head area. The protagonist looks at his friend saying that was a complete mess, to which the other replies that at least he managed to save his friend's life. However, the boy says they were just going to take the money and leave, so they shouldn't have gotten involved, but the blonde can only laugh lightly at that. But suddenly, we hear a loud gunshot that ends up hitting the one who just saved the main character's life. Seeing his friend's body fall to the ground, the other can only scream his name at that very moment. But then, with adrenaline rushing, he looks to see where the shot came from. And we can see it's a second armed man who is reloading his gun. And so Keelan realizes that this was more organized than he had thought. The boy promptly says that this is really bad and turns his eyes in another direction, because the robber's gun is within his reach at that very moment. He then dodges the older man's attack while jumping at his only chance to survive. Grabbing the gun, he simply raises it to finish the situation. And both end up shooting at the same time, with our protagonist hitting the head, but also getting shot at the same moment. The ketchup ends up spilling from his mouth due to the damage he just suffered so suddenly. And as he falls to the ground, the impact of his body hurts him even more. His breathing is heavy and the adrenaline is fading more and more. He can feel everything getting colder and his body seems heavier. Then sinking, he remembers he came there just to get some money. His goal was simply to pay his mother's hospital bills, and if he doesn't manage to, both she and his sister won't survive. He can't accept that, and that's why he says he won't die there because his family still needs him. However, his eyes keep getting heavier and heavier, thus taking him to the sweet embrace of death. But suddenly, a voice in that place says it will guarantee him a second chance at life, and that he must prove himself worthy to survive. Soon, opening his eyes, he finds himself in a completely different setting. And as he gets up, he is welcomed into the realm of eternity. Suddenly, the blonde who had died first approaches our protagonist. He then asks where on earth they are, as everything seems so cold and strange, to which it is said that maybe it's hell. But suddenly, someone ends up welcoming them to the realm of eternity, because they ended up being a small portion of those who ran out of all their time on Earth, but were lucky enough to qualify for this test. Our boy wonders what this is all about, as something had already been mentioned while they were diving toward death. The blonde, on the other hand, tries to rip off this strange watch from his arm, but it's not possible. Soon the object states that after completing the test, they can choose their own reward, these being many that are not important. But one of them is precisely the chance to return to the mortal realm, and that's why they must at least survive the test and increase their lifespan. Our boy wonders how he can even see the menu for this kind of thing, which not even the blonde knows. But then he notices something, that being apparently the protagonist's sister, who is standing on top of a rock at this very moment. Our boy quickly recognizes her as Dudu, but feels something strange. The blonde, on the other hand, decides to approach saying he'll go check, to which our dear main character tells him to wait a moment. However, the man with the bandage on his face asks if he's going crazy just standing there since that's his friend's sister. But our boy says it's not possible for the girl to be there, since she's at school at this very moment. He then says the place she was in was extremely safe, and that he even contacted her before going there. So Kevin states that it's clear that the woman on top of the rock is completely strange and different from his sister. Suddenly, this girl jumps down from there all at once. From rock to rock, she ends up entering the waterfall as if there were an entrance there. The blonde, on the other hand, says they at least have to go check to be sure. After all, the girl might be related to the initial test mentioned by the watch. Realizing this, our boy remains tense and says they should move forward with caution and not assume it's that simple. After a short time, we see the water falling from the waterfall continuously. The blonde says there's something strange there, as the entrance the girl used in the waterfall is no longer there. Our dear suit-wearing boy tries to say that this could easily be an illusion they're experiencing. But suddenly, from behind the blonde, we can see the figure of the girl emerging from the waters like some kind of ghost. And as he turns, he tries to question in his mind whether that is really the protagonist's sister, not realizing that it's a huge monster in the shape of a woman with an antenna on its head. Our dear young man stretches out his arm trying to scream for his friend not to do that, because the one he thought was his sister was actually a monster coming to attack him from above. We can see the protagonist's friend breathing slightly while wounds spread all over his body. With a heavy gaze, he tries to say that he needs to get up as quickly as possible. Then he sees his friend running toward him, trying to save him at that very moment. With that in mind, the boy stretches out his arm and asks him to be as fast as possible. But then we see that he's already falling into the monster's mouth at that very moment. And so the huge creature ends up devouring him in a single gulp, leaving only one remaining member in that place. Our protagonist watches this bloody scene at that exact moment, and the system informs that the player Chen Yinian has just been killed in this hell. Then we see the mortal world, where one of the men says that the people in those coffins are extremely honored because in an armed robbery case, they bravely fought against the criminals and sacrificed themselves, and we can see the protagonist's sister crying while one of the uncles tries to calm her. Everyone believes that the young men are heroes who protected the people, and that's why they will pray for their lives, believing that they are resting in peace. The system promptly states that the protagonist's body is about to be cremated, so if he loses his mortal body, he won't be able to return. Thus, the mission is given to kill the ghost fish with a glowing antenna to gain additional time of life and possibly manage to stop the funeral. So the remaining time he has to complete this mission is exactly 10 minutes at this very moment. Our boy thinks hard about the consciousness of his friend trying to call him, but then he starts to hear voices telling him to escape as quickly as possible. And so from inside that monster, his friend's consciousness is in there. While the beast attacks, he can only hear his friend telling him to run away as fast as possible. Our boy has his shirt torn, managing to dodge the monster's attack. Staring at it, he realizes that perhaps by swallowing his friend, his consciousness ended up inside the monster. And so looking closely, he says he has to find a weakness in that giant body. Then he notices that the thing on its head is glowing brightly in a blue tone. Soon, another attack is launched, which he manages to dodge with a backward jump. Then, grabbing the antenna attached to the creature's head, he begins to pull it, yelling for it to give his friend back. And with all the strength of his skinny arms, he starts shouting for it to spit out the one who saved his life back to him. And so the young man manages to rip it out with a final scream that causes blue blood to spurt from the massive creature. Then it is said that the mission has been completed, and he has earned an unpurified ghost fragment, and is asked if he wants to return, to which he says yes. Soon, red particles cover his body, causing the boy to slowly disappear, and he ends up asking where his friend is. To which it is said that his death was already confirmed before the transmission, and looking at the object on his wrists, the boy thinks the system is messing with him. And suddenly, as he gets up, he tries to shout his friend's name once again, the one who sacrificed himself for him. However, the boy only manages to open his coffin at that exact moment, drawing the attention of everyone who was at his funeral. Frightened, the attendees begin to scream in terror and fear of what is happening. They start to run desperately, saying there's a ghost there, and they need to get out as fast as possible. But suddenly, our protagonist's sister approaches and gives him a hug, very happy that he woke up even after all that happened. She had thought she would never see him again and begs him not to scare her like that ever again. However, our protagonist only looks to the side at that very moment as he realizes that his friend's body is still inside that coffin. Sometime later, we see buildings lit up while night has already fallen. On a balcony, our boy is thinking that all of it seemed like some kind of dream. However, that place was clearly reality, since even the wash had been brought with him. But no matter how hard he tries, he can't hear the system's voice, but when he looks at it, he notices the object strangely already shows the number 11. Then it drops to the number 10, and he wonders what is going on. Realizing it's a countdown, the boy questions what will happen when it reaches 0 and has a suspicion of what it might be. However, suddenly the balcony glass breaks, pushing him forward and causing him to fall toward the ground. He wonders if this could really be happening after all. Things like this weren't supposed to occur. Getting closer to the ground, the boy realizes the countdown can only mean one thing. Upon dying, he ends up returning to the realm of eternity, being greeted by a strike coming from his direction. Being hit, he ends up thrown toward one of the temples that appeared at that very moment. Completely injured, the boy wonders what is going on there, as he doesn't understand how any of it works. Our boy ends up looking toward the one who launched the attack, apparently a kind of origami monster that is approaching. Quickly, the creature stretches its arm toward him to launch an extremely powerful attack and take his life. He manages to dodge it with a simple step to the side. However, he grits his teeth upon realizing he doesn't even have time to think about the situation. Then the system decides to give him a friendly reminder, saying it's better to fight spirits using his divine mask. Quickly, that spirit begins to summon more paper at once, sending them toward our boy to kill him. He remembers having heard about that. After all, it was a reward given in the first mission he just completed, but he never received it. Soon he ends up shouting, questioning how he can use the so-called divine mask at that very moment. And the system, being very cold, simply responds that he has to wear it, which only enrages our boy all at once. However, that piece of paper, on the other hand, manages to cut our boy's leg, making the ketchup spill from it. Several other attacks are coming his way, and he realizes that this may very well be his end after all. But suddenly, someone appears using a strange weapon and cutting down those attacks all at once. The monster, after suffering such damage, begins to scream in extreme pain and rage at the same time, then launches dozens of attacks in the direction of the girl who dared to interfere. However, she simply makes a silence gesture, placing her finger over her mouth. And upon completing that, we can clearly see that the paper attacks simply stop before even hitting her. Our boy is completely confused, realizing that such a feat actually works so easily. The girl, on the other hand, just takes advantage of that opening to go at the origami in one swift motion. She then attacks it and slices its entire body in half with a single strike. Our protagonist realizes she is extremely powerful, having resolved the situation with just one attack. The woman promptly greets our protagonist, who quickly responds to her. He ends up thanking her for saving him, but the young woman doesn't have time, so she tells the boy to run as fast as he can. There are two types of origami, one invisible and one visible, which is extremely powerful, and he must find an invisible one in order to complete his mission. She then decides to leave, telling the protagonist to stay away from her, to which the boy tries to argue that it's safer if they stay together. The woman promptly states that forming team is a terrible choice, as everyone who comes here has different missions to grow their own power. She finishes by saying she didn't come here to help him but to kill her target, and only ended up helping because he was in the way. She then says goodbye, telling him to leave now that he understands that he'll have to face a monster much stronger than the origami she just killed. Our boy thinks that what she said is true after all. He feels like a complete newbie in this game-like situation and wonders how he'll manage to find the invisible one in this state. Suddenly, a huge explosion can be heard in the temple that our boy has already moved away from. Looking in that direction, he ends up wondering what's going on. There's no way something could happen in so little time, until suddenly the girl from earlier falls into his arms, having been thrown in his direction. Holding her, he realizes she's completely wounded and tells her to get up and wake up as quickly as possible. But the young woman only tells him to run away from there as fast as he can, because the monster she was fighting is already there to kill them at this very moment. The creature promptly begins using one of its target's voices to try to catch the protagonist's attention. Following that, the monster uses a powerful attack, which our boy manages to dodge. In his mind, he thinks that creature is extremely fast, and the girl asks where the mask is, stating that this might be her last chance. With a cannon on its arm, the monster prepares to fire an energy beam. It then launches a light attack, which our boy dodges, receiving the information to use the swipe down menu to equip his mask. Hearing that calmly, he remembers it's similar to a motion the girl had already made. So he makes a downward gesture, realizing that's how the menu works in this world. He then selects the option for his own inventory, saying to himself to run as fast as possible. Clicking on the mask-like object, he only thinks that he needs to use it as quickly as possible in order to fight back. However, the system informs him that it's necessary to load the item's files in order to use it, and that it will take some time. But our boy says it's too late for that and questions what he can do. The loading is already at 98%, and the monster's claw is about to hit his eye at that exact moment. But the protagonist's companion promptly uses her whispering ability to paralyze the creature in front of them. Then the mask finishes loading, bearing the name Shifu rests in the river of Hades, and our boy promptly equips it. Suddenly, a beam of intense light falls from the sky right where our boy is standing. It turns out to be his black sword, which promptly blocks the attack that came directly at him. With a simple movement, he launches an attack of black flames in the direction of the monster. The power of the blow completely obliterates the creature that was in front of him. Seeing this, the girl realizes he is extremely powerful, as even a black spirit of rank B was taken down with a single attack. Looking at our boy, she can only blush because such a feat is incredible. But then she steps away from him, saying her mission is complete, and that she'll express her gratitude when they meet face to face. She then assumes that the invisible origami must be near the temple where they were, so he should be fine. As she finishes disappearing, she says they will meet again very soon, saying our protagonist's name one last time. After some time, we finally see the mortal realm where someone starts calling for them on her. It's our protagonist, who is sleeping at this very moment. The girl ends up calling him, eventually slapping the table and suddenly startling him. She says it's getting late and they're being told to return to their dorms, to which our boy replies that he still has some blue papers to work on. Receiving this information, the girls promptly say goodbye, and our protagonist says he'll see them soon. He realizes he still has a lot of time left, since he managed to eliminate a very powerful monster, but now only 1 hour remains at this exact moment. Suddenly, a message arrives telling him to go directly to the student union, which is strange because it's already approaching 10 o'clock at night. Walking through the college corridors, he thinks it must be something urgent, and after all, it's better to go to that room since he doesn't want people to end up finding his body. However, it shouldn't take more than an hour, so the boy knocks on the door, trying to call discreetly. Upon opening it, he apologizes for intruding and was about to ask a question, until he ends up widening his eyes in extreme doubt when he sees someone. It's the girl who was with him in the realm of eternity and who was saved by him. Our boy enters the room and asks how she ended up there, to which it's answered that she is the president of the student council, so it's natural for her to be there, surprising Kyung Yi. She then explains that she knew our protagonist well before he ended up in the realm of eternity. But in the end, even though he was someone chosen to pass the test, their meeting the other day was just a coincidence. To which our boy asks about his former friend, and the woman coldly states that the boy is dead because his body has already been cremated, so it's impossible to bring him back. She says that someone who couldn't pass the preliminary challenge is not qualified to keep fighting, so clinging to the weak is a mistake. But our boy promptly grabs her clothes and pulls her, telling her to show some respect because that was his best friend who sacrificed himself for him. And we can see that out of so much anger, Kyun ends up spitting in the face of the woman in front of him. With that, she quickly immobilizes him, placing her hand on his neck. Throwing him against the table, she states that first of all, he needs to show some respect and not spit in someone else's face. Saying she has nothing to do with what happened, she finishes by saying she'll show her gratitude for being saved and will answer any question he has. But our boy, with a smile, asks if what's in front of him is really what they call gratitude in the end. And the girl ends up lowering herself a bit, asking if it's not after all. Then she gets closer to his ear, whispering that this is just the beginning of this little adventure. Our protagonist, on the other hand, blushes as dirty thoughts cross his mind and says they've only known each other for a short time and he doesn't even know her name. But he's quickly surprised to see a weapon pointed directly at his face, and right after the shot, he ends up waking up in the other place suddenly. The other girl promptly explains that no matter the situation, as soon as he enters the realm of eternity, he must put on his mask as quickly as possible. Even a second later can end up interrupting everything, because it greatly increases the chance of him ending up dying right there. The girl promptly asks how many black spirits he has killed in total, to which he replies that there were 3, a light fish, a humanoid monster, and an invisible origami. After that, the woman quickly uses her whisper spell, telling him to check his backpack because there should be some ghost fragments in it. Then the huge bird that was attacking him falls to the ground, and she shouts for him to find them. With the jewels in hand, he asks what he should do, to which she says to devour them. Our boy is confused, but the woman promptly puts them in his mouth, ordering him to obey this command as quickly as possible. He falls to the ground, spitting, while the woman says that eating those fragments will give him experience to level up, so he should have reached level 4 or 5. Soon after, he sees that he has unlocked a new skill called Soul Summon. This is a skill from the first monster he killed. The girl says his ability seems useful since the monsters he kills will give him their skills. And it seems that now, at this very moment, her target has just arrived and her mission is about to begin. With the enemy approaching, the girl explains that she will block its movements while the protagonist must kill it. So they both agree, and the protagonist charges in at once. Following that, he advances and lands a direct attack on one of the creature's monstrous arms. However, he realizes that he wasn't able to cut through that thick limb. Suddenly, someone grabs his shirt collar, pulling him back. It's the girl from earlier, who ends up throwing him to the side to avoid the strike. The spirit immediately focuses its attack on the girl all at once. However, several cuts are made around that thick limb and along its lower arm, thus cutting everything at once while she is airborne to deliver a final strike. She nearly slices the monster in half in the end. She then asks to know the status of the protagonist's mask. The boy begins to read it aloud, saying it's rank F with power B and speed C, to which she says she doesn't need to know more. The girl, on the other hand, thinks that with such low attributes, it should be impossible to have defeated that previous monster, so she wonders if it was just luck. Suddenly, the bird from earlier starts charging forward with a fierce cry, and the girl apologizes, saying she had forgotten about it, and tells the protagonist to take care of this last monster. He leaves toward the creature, saying he understood very well. The girl notices that he's having difficulty fighting a rank F fire bird, which is the same rank as his mask, and thinks it really must have been luck. But suddenly, she is shocked to realize something. It's the fact that the boy is actually an illusion created with the bubble fish's skill. She then realizes that he became invisible by using the origami's ability to his advantage. Appearing at one side, our protagonist feels confident. He then says in his mind that he'll use the laser of the faceless man he killed. However, incredibly, the attack ends up failing at that exact moment. The spirit, noticing this, prepares a fireball, and our boy is shocked to realize that his final attack has failed. But suddenly, the girl decides to help, finishing the creature off with a final blow to the head. Our boy promptly bows, thanking his senior for helping him, to which she thinks that even though his attributes may be low, he is truly a prodigy in the art of using these abilities. And as she opens her eyes, she can see the protagonist's face telling her to wake up. And so he ends up asking her to let him get up as quickly as possible because the situation is embarrassing. Throughout the school, the sound of the slap echoes loudly. In any case, the girl says her name is Chen Fi, and from now on, they will be working together, so she will always be willing to help our protagonist. He then says that he'll be under her guidance, which she understands. But what neither of them notices at first is that someone is watching them from behind that door. Chen quickly senses the presence and asks who's there. The red-haired girl promptly reveals herself, apologizing to her brother, who is our protagonist, for being there. The boy then decides to explain, saying that she is his class secretary, and the girl formally introduces herself. But soon the other woman ends up getting irritated. After all, she can't keep coming to these places so late at night, and the woman understands that. Then she shouts not to worry because she won't tell anyone that the class monitor is having a relationship with the student council president. Quickly irritated, the girl says they're not dating or anything like that, and the boy wonders why he's getting slapped. Following that, the redhead says they don't need to worry since she won't tell anyone, without noticing that a ghostly hand is approaching. Suddenly, her soul ends up leaving her body, which collapses to the ground at that exact moment. Our boy then questions what is happening there, since it's so unusual to see these things in this place. It's soon explained that her breathing and heartbeat started gradually decreasing, and her body temperature dropped immensely, and she even lost consciousness. And Sir Chen realizes it's the death-sleep syndrome. Quickly, that soul rushes out the door like a sudden blur. The girl throws the door open with all of her strength, ordering that they start chasing the spirit, saying they shouldn't worry about the body right now. The boy then asks for an explanation about this syndrome, and it's quickly said that this happens when a spirit manages to devour a human soul, which confuses our protagonist because they are in the mortal realm. To which Shen explains that there are shadow spirits that can cross between worlds, and just last week, they managed to destroy 2 portals. Just as humans become stronger by devouring soul fragments, spirits can also increase their strength by eating, especially human souls. Our protagonist quickly asks if there's a way to cure the sleep disease, to which it's answered that if they manage to kill the shadow spirit that ate the soul, then all human souls will be released, thus curing the syndrome. She quickly realizes our boy has stopped and asks what's wrong. Confused and angry, our boy asks if it's possible to free his mother's soul if they eliminate the spirit that devoured her soul. To which it's said that it is possible, but first they need to find it among the hundreds of thousands of black spirits that exist in the world. Suddenly, she realizes she lost sight of the soul that was running at that exact moment. So she orders the protagonist to search in the teacher's lounge while she continues running through the corridors. The warden says he must wear his mask and be ready for any type of combat at the right moment, which he understands. We can promptly hear our boy's heavy footsteps heading toward the room, and so he manages to spot the blur running with his friend's soul. Sliding to the side, he yells that it won't be able to escape from him. However, suddenly someone opens the door and slams it into our protagonist's face. Lying on the ground with his hand on his head, our boy recognizes the person. It's one of the teachers named Chen Pan, who has been working at this college for many years. As he gets up, our boy wonders why the older man is there, to which the same question could be asked of him. Then the teacher demands answers as to why he's running around the faculty area at this hour, and Qian briefly explains the situation. The man promptly asks if the boy is some kind of doctor to diagnose the girl so quickly. However, Qian asks if that really matters since Cheng Wanyue is at that moment collapsed and unconscious, to which the teacher says the protagonist must not have understood. He must inform the authorities and doctors, then the parents, and follow the rules. But our protagonist questions if the protocol is more important than the life of his classmate who is, at that exact moment, sleeping toward death. And the old man says that's not a teacher's concern. His concern is helping the school, no matter the means. He then orders him to loosen his tie and return to his dorm. But our protagonist, furious, punches the old man in the face. The man wipes his mouth, saying he truly has vigor, but no pride whatsoever, because hitting a teacher out of impulse could ruin his life at the school. We then see the front of the school entrance, where ambulances have already arrived at the scene. The protagonist's companion asks if he ended up losing the spirit, which he confirms he did. Sitting beside him, we can hear Chen explaining that the spirit is probably hiding somewhere in the school area. She then decides to show him some information about the number of people affected at the school, which has drastically increased, reaching up to 90 recorded cases. Our boy wonders how he never heard about this, to which it's said that the institution ensures these cases are covered up to avoid panic. Students who become patients quickly enter these conditions, and the school provides a large amount of money to keep it hidden. But there is one thing that serves as evidence in the end. These spirits end up choosing people who are damaged in some way, and even those who are isolated from groups are left unprotected in the end. But most importantly, out of all 90 cases, every single one is a student without any exception, as if there were some kind of protective umbrella over the teachers and other school staff. Shen quickly gets up, realizing something, which the girl asks him about. What is it that he noticed? And our protagonist calls for his partner, then asks if by any chance she knows Professor Chen Pan. After some time, our boy ends up being formal and asks his sister where they are going. But she says he doesn't need to call her with such a complex honorific and should just say Sister Fee, and that they are going to do a report. Surprised, our boy wonders who they're going to give this information to which it's said that the two of them aren't the only ones chosen by the realm of eternity. So to ensure survival, people end up forming teams. The one she's currently in is the Black Eagle Hunting Group. She then decides to introduce one of the members, the man next to her, named Song Zhiguang. The older man promptly states that this group is extremely large and organized, so it's impossible for him to have any trouble in this place. But then he's reminded by the woman that first of all, they have to convince the leader to let him in, to which the man quickly agrees. As they get out of the car, they finally arrive at the place where the organization is based. While walking through the hallways, our dear partner tells him that he should answer any questions asked of him politely. As the door opens, we see light entering the room, and a group of people was waiting for them. Among them, a blonde man who is apparently the leader named Chian calls the girl by the honorific Black Eagle Blade. He also notices that she is bringing an unknown person to the location at that exact moment. Sometime later, the leader ends up asking for a report of what happened. After understanding the whole situation, the blonde promptly asks if our protagonist has anything to say at that moment. And the boy, quick with his words, simply states that he wants to join their hunting team. The leader promptly asks what type of mask and god it represents, to which it's answered that it's the Hell Lord, rank F. It said that this mask is not trustworthy, so even if you could make an exception to let him join, it's questionable what a rank F is even capable of. He concludes by saying that the realm of eternity is not a place for children to play, but a battlefield between life and death. So he can't allow just anyone to join them with total trust, and ends by asking who would entrust their life to someone of such a low level. Our protagonist states that everyone there starts with an extremely low rank, so he says he can easily increase his strength to be able to keep up. The leader quickly explains that masks evolve whenever you reach level 100, and normally people are born with rank B, but his is the lowest possible. But this man isn't completely heartless, and so if he manages to complete the mission he reported, he will accept him into the group. But the protagonist's friend states that the spirit is holding at least 90 human souls, so sending the protagonist alone might be a death sentence. The leader, on the other hand, smiles and says he didn't expect the Black Eagle Blade to say something like that. He then shouts that anyone present there can simply send their subordinates to go along with the rank F, and anyone who accepts will not suffer any kind of punishment or even subordination. But it's important to warn our boy that everyone fighting there is doing so for their own lives, so he can't ask others to die just to take a risk for him. Each member of the group trusts their companion above all else, to the point of showing their back to them and questioning who else would be capable of doing the same. However, our boy stands up saying he will do it himself. He then announces that he must kill the spirit that devoured his mother's soul, and that he will join this group no matter the cost. Following this, the boy's companion says she will go with him, but is quickly called by the leader. He says that she is someone very valuable to them, but it is important to remember that she cannot forget her own missions. But the girl, with a serious look, states that she has none because her only goal is to help the people she knows. After that, we see the room where the protagonist's friend is lying down, and her companion says he was impulsive during a meeting. Soon, Kyan states that he couldn't control himself because he needs to save his mother and has no choice but to rely on their help. The girl asks if he even knows how powerful the enemy he's going to face is, to which he replies that he does not. It is then promptly explained that ghosts are ranked from F to SS, and the more human-like they are, the stronger they become in comparison. Even that faceless demon was compared to her mask. Remembering that, the boy says that the monster that ended up being killed caused a lot of damage to her, and the girl promptly punches him on the head, saying that's not what he's thinking. It is then explained that the creature trapped her in a trap and took her directly into its laser at once, thus causing severe damage. If a spirit is cooperating with the human, it means it must be able to communicate with them, so it can be said that it is of an extremely high level. If it really is so human-like, then it can be guaranteed that it is at least rank S or even SS, and for that reason, it will be a problem for both of them to face it. But our boy states that even if it is dangerous, they have to do it for the redhead. She is a person who lost her relatives very early, and after living with her grandmother for so long, the latter ended up getting sick and has to work most of the time. Our protagonist shares the same situation as the girl, since he has never seen his father since birth, and after his mother got sick, he had to do thousands of things. Fighting to stay alive is something he wishes on no one, not even the Lord of Hell himself. But the girl, breaking the tension, says that the boy already has a mask from the Lord of Hell, so he shouldn't say those things, and the boy just sighs and asks about hers. Following this, the girl decides to explain that her mask comes from the god of wisdom, being rank A, and basically has the ability to control thought. Our protagonist thinks it's similar to a time controlling ability, but it is stated that it's much weaker since it can only control 1 or 2 seconds. Suddenly, we see something that suddenly catches the girl's attention. That thing calling her was precisely Professor Chen Pan, arriving at that exact moment at the hospital. Seeing this, our protagonist wonders what he's doing there, and his partner states they should follow him. Observing from afar, they notice he is talking with the doctor about his wife's condition being stable and that he doesn't need to visit them every day. But the man says you must do it out of respect, not out of personal interest. However, the doctor says he's not sure if she will be able to wake up after so long, and is already considering taking her to a vegetative state. And the professor says he doesn't need to say all that since he's the one paying his bills, and promptly the doctor decides to leave. Our protagonist is impressed by the fact that his wife also has the death sleep syndrome. However, he then states it doesn't make sense. After all, he visited his wife every day and yet didn't feel any sympathy for his friend who was in the same condition. It is then explained in the girl's thoughts that the old man may be being forced to cooperate with the shadow spirit to save his wife. Suddenly, someone bumps into her and she instinctively apologizes. But this mysterious person says that ordinary humans can't really see the shadow spirit normally. Both are startled to see that, since someone like that is unusual in this place. Chen Fei promptly gets ready, and the man in front of them explains that he has no intention of fighting since there are many important people around. He then reveals that he knows our protagonist because his mother is in that hospital, and the red-haired girl is also there along with the other 93 from the school. The girl notices that the number increased again and realizes she has fallen into a trap. However, the spirit turns around saying that his contract only allows him to devour one person per day, so he will let them go. But he states with a terrifying look that the next day they should be more careful, finishing with a macabre laugh. Following that, we see the next night at the school where something is happening. It is the demon sucking another soul, the 94th. The professor says the other must get out of there quickly because it needs to look as much like an accident as possible, and the school won't leave them alone if they find out he's involved. But the spirit says he doesn't seem afraid, even though he can't see him and can only hear his voice. However, the man shouldn't worry too much since there are still 6 souls left to reach his full strength. He then says he can simply create a loophole in the contract and allow him to devour 100 souls directly, and then he'll fulfill this promise immediately. But the man says he remembers hearing that the more powerful a spirit becomes, the more human it looks. If the demon really wants to wear human skin, then let him do it on his terms because being reckless would only cause more problems. Impressed, the spirit says the human is very proper to follow such rules, to which the man replies that he is simply a reserved person. But laughing aloud, the ghost questions whether those two are also included in the non-attack clause of the contract. He then manages to defend himself from our protagonist's attack in a single move using his sword. Getting close to his face, he says the boy has a beautiful expression, though it lacks a bit of intensity. But suddenly, he vanishes right in front of him, leaving him stunned. Then he feels a shock throughout his body and realizes he is now unable to move at that moment. Taking advantage of that, the pair promptly attack his chest area using their blades. However, they aren't able to hurt him. He says they need to use a bit more force while swinging. He then grabs the girl's arm, saying they should finish this as quickly as possible. This evil spirit promptly throws both of them back at once so that they end up together in the same spot. The girl, upon getting up, states that the professor doesn't seem to have any intention of explaining everything there. The man promptly says he only has 2 options: either never open his mouth again or die at that exact moment, so they better decide. On the other hand, our protagonist shouts that he doesn't care about others, even though he has a wife currently suffering from such a severe condition. The professor in turn says that Kyan Yi seems to have made his choice out of the 2 options he mentioned earlier. Then the evil spirit charges at him with full force immediately. Ken Fei quickly manages to get in front of the attack, partially blocking it. The blade still hits her shoulder, but she tells him not to worry and just fire. As she throws her head to the side, we can see a laser heading toward the enemy at that very moment. Confused, the skinny man wonders what that is emitting such a strong and hot light at the same time. Then suddenly, with a thunderous sound of energy, the laser is fired all at once. In the girl's thoughts, she says that this is a direct attack from that beam, capable of piercing even metal. But suddenly she hears the spirit's voice saying that this strike is truly an unexpected innovation. Confused to see the creature still whole after the smoke clears, the spirit says that the laser of a faceless spirit is truly fascinating. Suddenly, using his speed, this monster manages to teleport behind our protagonist, piercing his chest in one swift motion. And with terrifying agility, he appears behind the girl, saying it's her turn to face the consequences. The younger one manages with difficulty to repel that strike, sending the skinny man flying back. Holding his sword with both hands, he prepares an extreme strike, emanating a demonic red energy. Then he launches a slash in the direction of the protagonist's friend all at once. Such power is capable of creating a small explosion at the site, but we can see that it was completely blocked by a newcomer who tells the girl to grab the protagonist and run away, as he will take care of the situation. Unlike the realm of eternity, people with injured bodies in the real world end up unable to regenerate. She is grateful that he came and tells him to be careful, to which the mohawked man says he trusts her escape skills very well. Understanding this, the woman prepares to leave and says they will see each other again at headquarters. However, the spirit charges forward once again, questioning where his prey is going. The muscular man promptly steps forward, saying he should be the one asking that, since now he is his opponent. Backing off slightly, the ghost says he is not on the same level as the others and asks this child to introduce himself. He is said to be the captain of the 3rd team of the Black Eagles and is therefore named Xiao Lian. Elsewhere, we see the driver calling for the girl along with the protagonist. Upon entering the car, she asks if the boss sent them there, to which it's said that the man decided to come on his own due to his temperament. Following that, the woman orders them to head to a hospital as quickly as possible, since that near rank S spirit is very strong and they couldn't handle him. However, she trusts the abilities of that man who has a mask above level A and should be able to escape using his miracle. The old man says the situation must really be complicated if it's enough to force someone of a captain's level to use such an ability. Our boy promptly asks what that would be, to which the girl tells him not to speak and just conserve his energy. She then asks him to listen to her, saying he must be careful and that they are heading to the hospital. He's going to enter the realm of eternity, so he must return as quickly as possible, and the old man, looking through the rearview mirror, realizes the situation is getting really serious. Because the boy already died in that situation, and with that, they both start speeding through the streets toward the hospital. We return to the battlefield, where a huge energy ends up being dissipated. The skinny man says the guy doesn't seem to be as strong as he initially thought. Kneeling, he says the spirit is stronger than he expected and questions why it's cooperating with a human. It is then promptly said that this man is cautious when acting because souls cannot be properly collected by himself. To enter one of the thrones of the 8 gods of darkness, he must devour souls for another 10 years, which confuses the bald man. Quickly, the spirit decides to explain, saying that they are spirits of the last class, stronger than all the others. There are spirits that can only reach a certain level of strength compared to a human, so it's possible for them to reach a defined limit. For example, he is at level A+ and just one step away from reaching rank S and can feel his progress increasing in his soul. Quickly, the man thanks him for the information, but says that this ghost's crazy dream is about to end. Laughing, the monster questions what he's going to do now that he's just going to end up a dead man anyway. However, the man tells his adversary to wait for his final strike before he speaks, and then he begins manifesting the miracle of the wing of the god Boreas. The figure of 4 gods in statue form appears, representing the incarnation of this man's miracle. It is said that power from the realm of eternity is always stolen, and by wearing a mask, you are able to grasp the tip of the iceberg of that power. However, there are those individuals who dedicate their lives to cultivation and finally manage to fuse the mask with their own soul. Thus, they are capable of obtaining a small portion of the deity's power, which is already more than enough to move the heavens and the earth. And this ability is primarily known as the incarnation of the miracle. The spirit promptly realizes the man has gained terrifying speed and is already coming to kill him. He then manages to strike with his blade all at once to take his life. However, he realizes that it is merely an illusion made of wind at that exact moment. One of the enormous statues promptly begins to raise its sword in the direction of the spirit, thus slamming it against the ground and creating a devastating wind around the area. The skinny man promptly realizes that the winds seems to be the key to this type of attack, and behind him we see another of the statues releasing even more wind in a strange way. He promptly realizes what's happening and starts laughing. He concludes that the 4 statues correspond to the direction of the wind. The most important thing is that the man fighting him can easily move through the wind to land an attack. One of those blows is capable of piercing his skin, and he realizes he's been hurt. He then launches a blood slash in the direction of the human man in front of him, but he realizes once again that he only managed to hit a remnant of the image of the power before him. Laughing, he admits the other is indeed skilled enough to keep fighting alone. However, the man takes that as an extreme insult. He then declares himself as the incarnation of the wind god himself and says that this creature is not worthy of witnessing his winds. And the spirit promptly says he's just a mere mortal, and so he will show him the reason for his audacity in saying that. Soon we can see the realm of eternity where the birds are singing, but suddenly something ends up flying past and hitting the tree that was holding them, making them flee. This being a rank F spirit known as the centipede millipede. Facing the monster is our protagonist, fully dressed with his sword and mask. Falling to the ground, he thinks to himself that he hadn't expected to be so weak after all. He questions how that spirit was able to move without making any sound, and especially how it managed to get behind him without even being sensed. And the most important thing he's feeling now is this strange sense of powerlessness for having been killed in such a ridiculous way. Now it's no longer about protecting his mother and his family, but everyone who is sacrificing themselves for him right now. And for that, he must prioritize his strength at this exact moment so he can reach a higher level of existence. Because on this difficult path, everything he's endured so far has simply been a walk over stones. The next day, we see the building where our protagonist lives with his sister. Next to his body, she is praying as hard as she can at that very moment. Suddenly, the protagonist's friend approaches and gives the girl a huge scare. Then she says she doesn't need to keep doing those things because he'll wake up soon. In her mind, the girl knows the protagonist was seriously injured, but he must have won the fight, so waking up is only a matter of time. However, she's worried about what happened with the shadow spirit, and if even the captain of the 3rd team was defeated, then will the boss be able to stop the spirit? Suddenly, our protagonist wakes up feeling nauseated. Looking at his clothes, he questions what he's doing dressed like that. His sister explains that whenever he has an accident, she makes sure to dress him that way and burn some incense so he wakes up safely. The two begin to have a heated sibling argument while the girl beside them receives a message. Upon seeing what's on her phone, she is deeply shocked and can't believe it. Suddenly, she calls out to our protagonist in a serious tone. She says they have to go as fast as possible because the situation just became urgent. In the car, the boy asks what exactly happened for them to rush out like that. With sweat on her face, the girl asks if he remembers the person who saved him the night before. The boy promptly remembers. it was the uncle with the mohawk. It's then explained that he is the captain of the 3rd team of the Black Eagles and his name is Cha Liang. He has god-level agility, and in terms of speed and destructive power, he's one of the best in the entire hunting squad. The old man explains that he even managed to manifest the incarnation of the miracle a long time ago, so it's hard to believe he would be killed or defeated by a spirit. Our boy, on the other hand, is confused about what the people around him are saying at that moment. Soon it's said they've arrived at the location and the boy becomes increasingly tense, realizing the school is completely destroyed and the hunter who was with them has disappeared during this time. And so the girl tells him not to worry after all, he's the best when it comes to escaping, and both begin to enter the area with a certain caution and tension on their faces. As they approach, the girl asks what the situation is, to which it's said that it's nothing major. Then he tells her to look at how the situation ended at that exact moment. A huge crater was formed from the power of those 2 monsters who fought. While he had come to see everything, he saw some members walk him around and so he told him to leave, but he's not sure what happened to Cha Liang. Soon, the man says that luckily they have someone capable of doing a master-level replay. The girl promptly recognizes her as Dan Ning, the girl who had just returned to the continent. And so this unfamiliar woman uses her miracle incarnation known as Memosine. It's said that her mask belongs to the god of memory, and her miracle incarnation is capable of replicating everything that happened in that time. And our boy, looking back, realizes he can now see the result of that battle from which he had to withdraw. With formidable attacks, the red-haired man is able to strike the demon with powerful blows. And with extreme force, he continues advancing without any kind of fear. He tries to hit him, but only manages to strike the ground in front of him at that exact moment. Our protagonist realizes he just disappeared, though this isn't exactly a dodge. Within the domain of the wind god, every object can be sensed by him, but Cha Liang cannot capture any trace of this demon at any moment. Our protagonist observes, realizing the spirit is coming directly from the shadow. The girl says it's reassuring to know that he can switch places with any whisper of the wind to defend himself. Now he's in the air at this very moment, preparing to make another attack. However, the shadow spirit is still fast and charges above him. It was through a movement from the statue's shadow that he managed to advance toward the human. The man promptly brings both hands together with extreme confidence. He then forms the attack of the 4 directions of the wind simultaneously. The demon ends up coughing blood unimaginably due to the force of the blow. The man then asks if traveling between shadows is the only trick this filthy being knows how to do. Falling to the ground, the demon starts spinning slightly, and then dives into the shadow, which the girl questions, did he just dive into his own? To which our protagonist says it's more like entering the grass to overcome the disadvantage he has against Cha Liang. Keaton then explains that the human's movements are made with a step of the wind, but this demon is able to move through shadows at will. In other words, this dark spirit could escape whenever he wants, but he's confident he can win, though they don't know why. And then we can see that the chains in the spirit's eye promptly break, announcing that the child's play ends here. He then uses his miracle incarnation, Beam of Myriad, to hollow shadows that connects to hell. The man is confused to see that he's summoning so many skeletons at once through the shadows. He then uses the 4 directions of the wind once again to attack and defend at the same time, but then realizes that behind him, another swarm of those monsters is approaching. It's then said that the skeletons are approaching from all possible directions, so it's impossible for Cha Liang to dodge them all. However, the man is clever enough and begins charging his energy. He thus forms a massive tornado that completely sweeps away the demonic aura from the area. Such power is capable of destroying even the school building at that very moment, causing the destruction that was seen earlier. And so a massive explosion is made, forming the crater where our protagonist is now located. The Mohawk man is left kneeling on the ground, breathing heavily. He thinks that this miracle is extremely powerful, and no matter how hard one tries to hide, objects cast shadows, so there's no chance of survival. Promptly, the demon attacks him, saying that his ability is a separate dimension capable of moving anything he desires. But then he rests the sword on his shoulder, realizing that what was in front of him was just another remnant of wind that dissipated with the last attack. And then with a smile, he says that for tonight, that's enough, and since it's already midnight, he'll take the opportunity to claim one more soul. The blonde man promptly states that they don't need to worry since Cha Liang is already at the headquarters and in no danger of dying. Then it is said that this demon's abilities involve moving through shadows, and with his incarnation, he can summon multiple skeletons from the darkness. The protagonist's friend promptly asks if she should inform the other captains about what is happening. But suddenly someone arrives asking what she's doing, then yelling that everything there's too problematic for her to handle so easily. After all, there's no need to make everyone waste their time with such a predictable trivia. All they have to do is kill Chen Pan and thus send the spirit back to the human world, and there's nothing wrong with that. Soon, the man with glasses tells his friend to come down to express her opinion since he can't hear clearly, and if she doesn't, then she won't be able to take part in the discussion they're having. Quickly, the girl ends up falling to the ground, feeling embarrassed and saying that they might end up with no help, so it's better to explain her plan. Promptly, the blonde man says they heard the suggestion and then asks what the thoughts are. The girl, however, gets irritated and quickly explains that there's going to be no objection, since normally spirits can't stay long outside the domain of eternity, and because of that, they enforce a pact and manage to remain in place. Our boy promptly says it doesn't seem to be like that, which instantly irritates the pink-haired girl. The young man explains that even without a contract, this sword spirit still has a lot of strength and could operate on its own even without a contract with Chen Pan. But quickly, the girl interrupts him, telling him to stop since this is a discussion between members of the Black Eagles team. The blonde man joins the conversation, saying to let him finish since it doesn't seem to be something sentimental, so he wants to hear what the boy has to say. As said before, without a contract, this demon cannot remain in the human world, but with its strength, it could easily devour as many souls as it wanted. So why would it care to make a contract with Chen Pan and restrict itself to just one soul per day? He thinks they should start investigating the professor, and they have time for that since it will take another 3 days for the demon to complete its goal. The blonde man promptly understands that Chen Pan seems to be more of a restriction to the sword spirit and thus says that if they kill him, they might end up suffering great losses. The protagonist's friend promptly joins the conversation, saying she agrees with him. However, the girl says she can't always side with that kid since he always speaks as if his word is absolute. But the woman says she's not taking anyone's side. After all, she just chooses the path with the least sacrifices and risks. The blonde man asks what his ally thinks, and she says she's tired and just wants to go back to sleep. With that, it was decided that the vote is 2-1 since our protagonist is not part of the group, and so they will start investigating. With that, everyone is dismissed to carry out their missions. Suddenly, we see another place where someone ends up shouting loudly. It's the short girl who says that guy never manages to listen. But the girl says there's no way their possibility is right after all. Everyone only voted because of Chen Fi's beauty. However, the man says she's being too harsh since she's also very pretty. Annoyed and blushing, the woman tells him not to say that kind of thing in a moment like this. And so she orders him to call Chao Liang because she's going with him to kill that professor once and for all. We then see the night of another day when the question is raised about the professor's influence in this incident. A school was struck by a tornado, and near the incident, the body of a student was found in the sleep of death. And then he questions how this always happens near the professor, and the other immediately asks what he's trying to say with that in a serious tone. The bald man says he's not interested in that syndrome or anything like that and couldn't care less if the man puts people in that state. But if a female student ends up falling into an eternal sleep of death and is sent to the hospital, it's always a waste. The professor is promptly trying to understand what this bald guy is trying to say. And the old man, on the other hand, says he doesn't need to try to understand. After all, he must have at least touched one of the unconscious female students. Since his wife is sleeping toward death, he couldn't feel more alone in this kind of situation without her. Suddenly, the professor starts loosening his tie while calling out to him, then saying that after his wife fell ill, his heart was broken and every day he prayed to a god to help her. But then one day, one of them ended up answering his call. The voice said he needed to help it devour at least 100 human souls, and then it would gain enough strength to bring his wife back to life. And so he asks what the man in front of him would do with such an offer. With a punch to the stomach, the professor demands answers from the frightened fat man. The bald man widens his eyes in pain from the sudden punch. On one side, there was the life of 100 innocent people, and on the other, the life of his beloved wife. So which would you choose to save? It is said that he handed over all of his beloved students, one by one, to the sleep of death just so his wife could open her eyes and look at him. Turning away, the professor states that he's willing to sacrifice anyone for that, and the bald man is no exception. The bald man promptly curses the professor, saying he doesn't really care about his job and that he'll remove him from there and call the police. And after making the report, his wife won't be able to stay safe, and he won't be able to protect other students from this syndrome either. However, the man says that patients with the death syndrome can't speak, frightening the old man. The skinny spirit promptly appears behind the bald man, saying that he is soul number 98. The next morning, we see a building, a hospital, where someone is trying to confirm communication. It's the girl who asks if Old Song can hear her at that exact moment, and it is explained that Shen Pan and the Phantom Sword Spirit always come to the hospital. And it's always at the same time to see his wife, and the protagonist's friend thanks the uncle, saying they will start the investigation. Our protagonist says his sister should focus on her studies since he's very busy doing drawings at school, and that's why he wants her to take good care of the house. The two girls accompanying him say he's really someone who thinks too much about his sister and seems obsessed, to which the boy tells them to shut up. Suddenly, they arrive at Professor Chen Pan's office at the school where the boy studies. Observing the place, they can only find some educational materials for the teacher and notes for upcoming tests. There's also nothing on the desk, so one of them checks the computer while the protagonist checks the bookshelf to see if there's anything suspicious. Promptly, the girl asks Old Song how things are going and if the professor and the spirit are still at the hospital. He says the car is still in the same place and probably hasn't left, but there's a problem because Lei Ju was asking where the professor was and he told the truth. Ken Fei promptly realizes she's going to kill the professor and asks to be put on the radio channel where they are at that exact moment. Meiju promptly says she's not doing anything wrong. The protagonist's friend tells her she must obey the leader's orders and focus on her own team. The girl says she was getting really bored, so she came up with a new plan to capture the old man's wife to make him talk at once. Kenfi says she's out of her mind because this plan is extremely risky due to the spirit, and the girl decides to just block the woman right then. The protagonist's friend, on the other hand, realizes her companion is extremely problematic and gets irritated. Soon the sleepy woman says that after searching, she couldn't find anything, so she's going to ask the god of memory to view the past. Then she uses the miracle of incarnation to spread her area of influence. We see that a huge circle was made exactly where the professor's apartment is. The previous night, he was with a book, handling it in a somewhat suspicious manner for an extended period. They both get closer and ask what they are seeing at that moment through the vision of the past. And they realize it's about people who ended up being victims of the sleep disease, revealing a notebook that lists those who will be killed. Quickly, the protagonist realizes that he is hiding it in a secret place in the closet. As he opens it, he immediately notices that it's not there as it should be. Then he says he found a false bottom that contains the book in that spot. Soon it is said that it is definitely Shengpan's hunting list, and even the numbers are marked with the souls that were devoured in order. And Changwan Yu ended up being number 90 on the list, just as they had seen before. The girl promptly approaches, asking if he found some kind of family connection, thus confusing him. It is soon explained that Changwan Yu and the guy from before were people without family support, and that the school is not an orphanage. And the professor took advantage of that to target those without any kind of influence, and if you look at the notebook photos, it's clear that some students are missing. Our boy promptly says this is a problem since the situation seems to confirm something that alarms him. So he starts flipping through the pages extremely quickly to see the next numbers. And the next target is precisely the protagonist's sister, who has no idea what is going on. Suddenly, we see the girl from earlier calling for Cheng Fei, saying something's wrong. The professor and the spirit are no longer at the hospital, and she searched everywhere but couldn't find a trace of them. She says that the intuition they had might actually be more false than they imagined. Our protagonist promptly puts on his mask while the woman tries to stop him, telling him to listen. However, Dear Shan quickly disappears from her sight before she can do anything. The girl decides to run off, telling her colleague to keep searching for evidence while she goes after the boy as fast as she can. We then see the protagonist's sister, thinking that her brother has been busy these last few weeks and probably forgot about dinner again. But this time she made sure to buy his favorite cream buns. He's going to love them, and she'll seem like a true Santa Claus for caring about him. Suddenly, something catches her attention. It's the girl from before. She walks right past without recognizing her and pulls down her hood in one motion. The girl immediately recognizes that this is the classmate who carried her brother earlier and wonders if she's his girlfriend or something like that. But she tells herself that she'll support her brother with his drawings and therefore doesn't need to worry about the girl who just passed by. After some time, we can once again observe the protagonist's house. He arrives there, calling out for his sister in a desperate voice. Removing his mask, he cautiously inspects the room at that exact moment. As he enters, he notices that the lunchbox being prepared for him is still warm and hasn't been opened. Suddenly, the boy's companion arrives, calling out to him, and he promptly states that his sister is not at home. He says he called her numerous times but got no answer, so he's going to try again. But suddenly, they hear a sound that grabs their attention and scares them. It's the ringtone of the phone she forgot when she left. Opening the bedroom door, our protagonist finds the scene of the only way he had to communicate with his sister in that dark room. He picks it up and examines it carefully. Then he says they need to return to school as quickly as possible, confusing his friend. She promptly asks why they're returning since they just left that place. And our boy explains that there was a cream bun order to be delivered and it's his favorite, so she must have called to take it to the school. If his sister went that far, she probably didn't pay for a taxi or even call a ride out, since her phone is still there. The girl says she's very thoughtful, but our protagonist slams the elevator, saying it's too slow. Suddenly, Chen Fei tells him to wait a moment while her friend jumps from the top of the place. With a shout, it's said that this is the 11th floor of the building, and the young man puts on his mask. Upon landing, our boy is already prepared to run, and everyone around is startled by the scene. He starts running as fast as he can, using his ability, the strength of 100 feet. Through the school hallways, we can hear someone singing a little melody. It's the protagonist's sister, who is trying to surprise him at this exact moment. But she ends up entering the completely dark workplace with no one visible. She thinks the boy is probably in his dormitory and decides to try calling him using her phone. But when she looks for it, she realizes she forgot it at home, so she won't be able to do that. However, she says she can simply ask for help from some architecture students to try to understand things. And suddenly, she ends up looking behind her, startled because she heard footsteps coming from behind. Extremely scared, the young girl tries to call out for her brother in this completely strange place, thinking it's him trying to prank her. But when she looks down the hallway, she sees that no one is there, neither in presence nor in spirit. And so she questions what she can do, not realizing that Professor Chen Pan is already standing behind her. Some time passes, and we see a red light coming directly from the hospital. Our protagonist approaches, seeing a crowd gathered in a place that should be closed. He takes off his mask and then notices an ambulance already there at that very moment. Fearing the worst, he begins to think that this can't be possible. Pushing through the people all at once, the tension takes over his body. Negative thoughts continue to spread in his mind like a kind of parasite, and then he reaches the center of the crowd, finding a girl lying down. It is his sister, who is now in a state of death-sleep syndrome. Even in this condition, she continued holding the gift for her brother with one hand. It might be due to willpower or something like that, but now one of the sweets ends up falling to the ground. This makes our protagonist realize that this is not a dream, but reality. The boy screams at the top of his lungs the name of the one responsible, Chen Pan, who put one of the most precious people to him in this situation. After this incident, we see a meeting where all the boy's acquaintances are gathered and the pink-haired girl who had warned them before is also there. It's said that the shadow spirit has had too many chances lately due to their irrational decision not to simply kill Chen Pan. She then tells them to look. After all, the protagonist's sister is number 98, and they may meet the requirement before they even take action. The oldest one agrees with the girl, saying that if he reaches the stage of the 8 black gods, it will probably be difficult to fight such power. Another girl says that the gap between rank S and them is considerable, and even with a rank A and the abilities of miracle incarnation, it would still be complicated. Ken Fee says they have no choice. After all, they only have at most 24 hours. She says that according to the book, our protagonist is the next, so the boy will have to be personally involved in this situation, even while emotionally weakened. She wouldn't dare say it, but earlier he ended up reading the book from the middle, and he didn't realize that on the second page was the photo and name of his mother, who is in the same state as his sister. Realizing this, the younger girl tries to call out to Kshan as if worried about it. However, she is interrupted when he mentions there are 3 points. Then the boy explains that he saw this before and had even considered it just an accident because she had come to visit him when she got sick. However, now that his plan is getting closer, the demon must eliminate everyone involved to avoid future problems. The second thing is that his ability to devour other gods' masks could be a help, and so he asks if he can do that. To which the protagonist's friend says it would be impossible. After all, a human body can't handle more than 2 god souls in a single body. Even the old man says that even possessing the mask of the King of Hell could be a problem because everyone ends up dead due to a certain event. Our protagonist asks about the fact that everyone who possesses such an artifact ends up dying and questions how that's possible. It is said that without exception, everyone dies mysteriously after starting a process of mastering miracle incarnation. Our boy asks if that's true, and then says he doesn't need that kind of thing to defeat him. And the girl from before says that if he has any plan, it's better to leave it to them because with the ability to teleport through shadows, that spirit becomes extremely powerful. But our boy says that was the third point he wanted to get to at that exact moment. Because with all the hatred he has accumulated, he managed to form a plan that will definitely work. In another place, we see the professor along with the spirit who is helping him. This demon says that his favorite student just left the school along with his friends, and so he assumes he can go capture them at that exact moment. However, the man says it wouldn't be a good idea because they could be easily alerted, so it's best to wait at least 4 hours until midnight. With that said, the demon asks how he's going to do that, to which the professor replies that a tracker was installed in the book that was taken. Following that, the ghost questions why he has to work so much. After all, he already has 99 souls, so he could just go down the stairs and devour any soul. However, the old man says they don't know that the spirit devoured the principal's soul the previous day, so they'll assume Kian is number 99 and will be on high alert. That makes this the best opportunity for attack, besides one more detail that catches the ghost's attention, which is the fact that the professor simply cares too much about his favorite student, and so he wonders what kind of speech he'll give during his graduation. After some time, Chen Fei asks if everything at the location is ready, to which the old man beside her approaches and says that most things are ready, but they're just waiting for the sword spirit to bite the bait. And the girl then asks the protagonist to repeat the plan, but as she looks at him, she notices he seems lost in his own thoughts. Because of that, the younger girl tells her companion to go discuss the plan with the others and leave her alone while she handles the situation. Approaching him, the woman asks if he's really okay, saying that the level of his mask is quite low. However, the girl states that this is the only viable method in this situation. If the only way to win is to kill Chen Fan, then his sister's and mother's lives will be lost forever, and that's why they must eliminate this ghost. When he was little, he used to have many nightmares, and every time it happened, his mother would come, wipe his tears, and sing a lullaby. Later, when they started going to school, every day she would come just to lift their spirits, and when he woke up, he was used to seeing her gentle face. However, after she contracted death-sleep syndrome, he ended up seeing her completely powerless, unable to do anything. In the end, He had to become someone kind but also strong, like a barrier to protect his sister and the members of his family. But now he feels that he did it wrong and says that kindness in the end turns out to be useless because it doesn't protect anyone, and that's why he needs brute strength to overcome anyone. The girl beside him says that fighting against your own emotions in a life or death situation can make you lose your sense and become illogical. But the boy says she doesn't understand him after all. He doesn't have a big heart or critical thinking, because in the hardest situation, he can only stay calm. When he's close to dying, he can feel lighter than a feather to think of ways to survive. Suddenly, a warning is given to the girl who's beside him at that exact moment. She stands up, telling them to get ready because their old enemy is already approaching. We can see the shadow of the sword ghost forming in the area at that very moment. And as it emerges, the spirit starts counting the number of people inside the location at that moment, promptly becoming disappointed upon seeing that there are only 5 people, and according to soul energy, they are 200 meters underground at this very moment. His energy promptly spreads to the area where shadows permeate at that exact moment. And as he exits, he states that these children chose a terrible place to hide because his shadow can reach anywhere and is invincible. However, he is startled upon realizing that the entire place suddenly becomes illuminated by several lights covering the entire room. Noticing this, he questions if it's a trap as everyone begins approaching him and surrounding him. The protagonist says that this is not a hiding place but an execution site for him, and so he tells him just one thing, which is to return the soul of his mother and sister at this exact moment to spare his life. However, the creature promptly laughs in his face, saying that these tricks are meaningless. After all, no matter what happens, he can simply make the following move, launching a single upward attack using the slash of his sword. The power is such that it completely destroys the lamps and mirrors that permeate the entire area. With a smile, the ghost declares that the shadows have returned, so they won't be able to do anything more to stop his ability. But suddenly, someone uses the incarnation of the miracle, and the spirit realizes that's bad because he knows who has that ability just by the voice. He clearly sensed 5 people in the place, but only 4 were visible, so the last one had been hiding the entire time. This girl ends up using her ability from the goddess Mnemosyne at that exact moment. Meanwhile, the ghost tries to rush toward her, using the shadows to get closer as fast as possible to that child who dares to interfere. However, the spell is already cast, and the entire chamber is filled with an image from the past. The elder blocks his strike and says that he will focus on the girl, but he won't be able to destroy any light that comes from a memory created by her ability. Our boy says they waited 3 hours for his arrival and kept this place completely lit to ensure it wouldn't be easily destroyed. Everything in this world has light, and he can only move through shadows that have a certain level of darkness in places he can see. With that in mind, the young man commands the spirit to draw his sword, for this will be the beginning of his execution. Realizing this, the creature promptly pulls back from the old man at that very moment, without noticing that a greater demon is right behind him at that exact instant, holding his bat. The other promptly tries to defend while feeling a shiver run down his entire body, paralyzed in that moment. And with that powerful blow, he ends up being thrown backward in an extremely dangerous way. The girl promptly states that they've landed 2 consecutive hits at that very moment. Then we see the past, where it's said that she has an ability that, with her incarnation of the miracle, allows her to land a critical hit 100% of the time on the 4th strike. And the more time she has to charge, the stronger it becomes. So it really is an ability designed to kill in a single blow. Our boy says they have 2 key elements that must be secured for victory. The first is to create a space where the shadow ghosts, the sword ghost, can escape. And the second is to ensure that the captain can land the 4th strike. An old song made sure to tell him that his earth god mask had the ability of excavation. The younger girl promptly states that the driver is truly useless in battle, to the point that they even call him a miner because of that ability. And so the boy says they'll use this ability to construct an underground arena filled with lights that will stay on for several hours. If the ghost thinks about destroying the chamber at that very moment, then Sister Dan Ning will use her incarnation of the miracle to endure for a few more hours. And that way, the ghost won't be able to escape. Realizing the plan, the older girl says she'll make sure to gather all the supplies for this situation. Our boy states that the second point is the most complicated because they'll only have one chance to make sure the captain lands the 4th blow, that being a bait placed in the middle of the battlefield. Everyone was wondering what it would be, and then we see that the spirit is struck. It is said that the situation will force the creature to prioritize one target to make the fight easier. At first, it will seem that he's focusing entirely on our protagonist, who is the weakest among them. He might prioritize attacking him, but he won't be a final target. After all, he'll want to eliminate one person above all others in this place, that being the girl who prevents him from creating shadows in the current situation. Everyone realizes this and states that the spirit has fallen into the trap. Promptly, our boy shouts for Uncle Cha Liang, telling him to act. The man, understanding the signal, clasps his hands and uses his incarnation of the miracle at that very moment, and with it, he summons the west wind to push the creature away from his companion. With that done, the 4 directions of wind begin to form in order to eliminate the spirit. But the creature is extremely skilled and manages to balance himself on his own sword to escape the blow. The creature continues advancing between the tornadoes of wind, saying that no matter what happens, if he can kill the woman, then victory will be his, no matter what. Soon the girl tries to tell her sister to run away from there as quickly as possible, worried about her. Our boy says that Dan Ming is going to get hit whether she wants to or not because she's the most relaxed at this moment. Her companion is confused about this since she might be a rank A, but she has a support type mask and doesn't have the stats to endure a direct hit. Our boy promptly gives a confident smile, saying she doesn't need to worry. After all, just let him hit her to see for herself what's going to happen. The spirit yells that it's all over because now the lights will go out and they will lose this battle. However, when he looks around, he realizes the room remains fully lit, just like before. Our boy says that the ability of the bubblefish spirit is to transform into anyone in his scene, and as a ghost, he should know that. The demon, looking to the side, realizes that it's just an illusion created by our boy, who took advantage of the spirit's lack of focus. And with a psychotic smile, he claims that this isn't completely unfair, which enrages the creature even more, causing it to curse him with every name possible. He feels a shiver running through his entire body and then freezes at that exact moment. Soon the 4 directions of wind hit him all at once, leaving him severely wounded. He spits blood and in his mind can only curse these bastards, saying they are unworthy of honor. And in front of him, Matt prepares to strike the demon with the final blow. We cut to another place where the Brazilian is with a woman who says that after all these years, he never took her on a date since they got married. The man says it's been 10 or maybe 8 years and he can't remember how many times he said that. His wife says that ever since they got married, he had promised a visit to the aquarium when they had time. Unfortunately, the professor was never able to give that to her and now apologizes. The woman says that sacrificing so many people for his own good doesn't seem like something that man would do. He then starts to walk away while the woman tries to tell him to stay a little longer in this dream, to which he replies that he can't because time is not on his side. Next time, he'll surely meet her in a place that isn't just in his head. Suddenly, we see the taxi driver calling for the man, saying they come to a very desolate place and asking what his friend is going to do there. But the professor promptly pulls out a check and tells him not to ask that kind of question and just keep driving. Then he says he won't have to wait long for what's about to happen there. Back to the battle, we see that the girl managed to land the 4th blow at that exact moment. The power is so great that it shakes the entire structure at once, causing the ground to crack. And so a massive light of power rises to the skies due to the amount of energy unleashed in that attack. The spirit barely survived and is now crawling on the ground at that very moment, until right in front of him he finds the man who was helping him at that exact moment. Our protagonist, with his group, says that their enemies have lost this battle, then calling out to Professor Chen Pan to make sure he understands the situation well. But suddenly, the old man realizes something that catches his attention. It is the spirit saying that there's only one thing left for him to get what he's always longed for. Our protagonist demands that the demon return his sister and mother at that very moment. However, the professor says he should understand the feeling of being so weak and losing the ones you love. Then he says he doesn't know how the protagonist gained powers with those strange masks, nor does he understand how he can see this person in front of him. This man is just an ordinary high school teacher and therefore had no choice but to make this decision. Ken Fag promptly announces for him to move since they need to kill this bastard as quickly as possible, and then they'll help him find the soul fragment of his wife. But the man questions how long that will take, because his wife can't wait that long until they fulfill that objective. A month before she was diagnosed with death-sleep syndrome, she entered the final stage of cancer, which had already materialized and could no longer be avoided. He planned to spend those last days or months of her life fulfilling all the promises he made to his wife and taking her to the most romantic place so he could make her happy. But fate rejected him once again, and she ended up entering that terrible state because of the universe itself. For decades, a teacher like him had to cleanse his own conscience and look for talented individuals, yet he asks why the heavens continue to punish him. His wife was someone who worked at a flower shop and even delivered flowers for free to funerals. So what does she do to deserve such punishment? He doesn't understand how the protagonist has superpowers, so he asks him to explain whether heaven and hell exist, because he wants to at least know what it's like there. If heaven really is a good place for those who die and receive good things, and hell is for those who need to be punished, why are they in separate places? The true hell is when good people are punished and the wicked are rewarded in the end. And so he says a profound phrase claiming that the human world itself is the true hell they have to endure before reaching heaven. Soon, the spirit manages to touch the professor's back at that exact moment, taking everyone by surprise. The protagonist's companions scream out for the professor at that exact moment, worried about what's going to happen next. And the already deformed creature announces that this was number 100, and with that, you will be able to evolve to rank S. With final laughter, we see a gigantic explosion occurring in the area due to the immense power that has just been unleashed. After some time, we see a news report where the reporter says he's announcing an explosion that just occurred around Yuhang Park. The fire brigade has already been called, and they're having to use a helicopter to fight the flames at this exact moment. However, suddenly the vehicle ends up being destroyed by the shadows of that spirit. The newscasters begin to see someone floating in the skies without realizing what's truly happening. The sword ghost promptly declares that she is very weak in this current situation. Fighting them all at once didn't even require the release of his miracle, and yet he admits he hadn't understood one thing. In the past, he was harshly judged by the 8 gods of darkness for being weaker, and so he thought it was because he had failed to understand how to release his miracle, and that's why he fought so hard. But now it's clear that it wasn't because of that, because he was underestimated. It was actually due to the fact that rank S and rank A are on completely different levels, as can be seen in the result of this battle. Our protagonist, lying on the ground, realizes that the situation truly is the worst possible. His uncle Chao Liang managed to pull him away, but even so, everyone suffered severe injuries. His 2 companions couldn't hold out even for a minute when the spirit evolved, and now there are only a few left who can even fight, being those who remain underground. However, the creature promptly jumps out, piercing the one who had been the biggest problem during the fight against the group. And with a smile, he declares that this time there won't be any bubblefish illusion to stop him. Our protagonist curses loudly in his thoughts, not realizing that the creature is already appearing behind him. Grabbing him by his clothes, he says that these snot-nosed kids are irritating. Then he applies force to slam him against the ground, saying that they have too many tricks. However, in the face of absolute power, everyone becomes insignificant, and so the creature decides to tell him a secret, revealing that it was he who devoured Chen Pan's wife's soul before anyone else. Everything was merely calculated since he saw the determination of a man who loved deeply, and so it was obvious he would accept the contract to save the one he loved. In the end, there are several people who possess resilient souls with special traits that allow them to resist being devoured, like the protagonist's mother. He still carries the memories of her final moments where she kept calling out for the protagonist and for her beloved daughter. He also says that this middle-aged woman simply had no luck upon realizing her children would end up the same way. With the sword in hand, this demon states that the protagonist's sister even tried to scare him for a moment. Maybe she even looked into his eyes with a very firm gaze. It was exactly the kind of look from someone who'd stare straight into your soul. But in the end, it was disgusting, and that's why he confirms that they really are siblings after all. With the blade shining, the spirit declares that the journey of our boy ends right here. And so he delivers a blow to the boy's neck in a single motion to finish him off instantly. With final laughter, he moves close to the boy's face, saying that he finally managed to win. The screams are loud as ketchup pours from the protagonist's body. He finds himself once again in that world where he is drowning. Someone calls him, and his eyes open instantly as his clothes begin to dissolve due to imminent death. A massive hand approaches, saying that only if he devours the object will he be able to survive. This presence then offers the mask of our boy's friend, saying there is no other choice. Kian says he can't devour it because he's certain he'll die in the process. However, the presence declares that he will die anyway if that spirit destroys his body, and then he won't have any chance of surviving. Besides, everyone the boy knows won't stand a chance of continuing to exist in this world. If he eats this object, there may be a chance to reverse the entire situation, and so he's told to devour even the shadows in order to escape that place. He must have extreme mental strength because the torment and nightmares that will come over time will be too much even for a demon to endure. However, he must do it to survive because if he succeeds, there will be a chance to stay alive. The boy's body suddenly rises with a different expression on his face, and we can clearly see that the mask is fused to his face and a yellow energy takes over the entire area around his right eye. Seeing this, the creature can only wonder if it made a mistake in not killing the protagonist. But upon looking more closely, it realizes that the boy ended up eating something that brought him back to life. And so the possessed Kunan throws the sword back to the one who originally wielded it. The ghost promptly manages to catch his weapon, even looking impressed by it. Then he looks in the boy's direction again to face him. But then he realizes that the boy has vanished at that exact moment and wonders if it's invisibility. But from the shadows, our masked boy already emerges with the intention of delivering a brutal attack from behind. The boy clearly manages to pin him to the ground while holding the sword in his mouth, and with a strong bite, he breaks it at that exact moment as if it were made of a cookie or something like that. The demon, realizing this, escapes from the boy's hands, even appearing frightened by it. He thinks he doesn't know what was devoured, but the boy's stats have risen to a maximum rank A in offensive terms. But that doesn't matter, after all, he's still far too weak compared to him, and so the creature plans to do something. With his hand in the shadow, he grabs the protagonist's foot in one go to launch an attack. And with that, he starts yelling that the other is completely useless when the shadows are on his side. But then he notices that he's not able to pull the boy closer and wonders if his powers are really that high. Next, he claims that it's not because of the protagonist, it's because of himself. It's impossible for him to move no matter how hard he tries. Watching our boy, it's clear that he used his friend's technique to his advantage, and so he wonders what his opponent is trying to do. The monster, on the other hand, grabs the ghost's hand, and with a strong pull, he brings him close while preparing his arm. Then unleashes an extremely brutal punch to the face of the one who dared try to kill him. The creature promptly flees, hurling curses into the air at that very moment because he realizes he is being overpowered. With his mouth completely shattered, the demon says that the boy is only a rank A and shouldn't act so arrogant just because he touched his feet. And so he decides to use his incarnation of the miracle at that exact moment, then summoning the mirror-eyed runner of the shadow skeletons. However, our boy manages to leap between these obstacles with simple and agile movements. Taking advantage of that, the spirit promptly attacks him, saying that it's finally over now. With a smile, he declares that even if the boy devoured the girl's mask, unfortunately a rank A will still be weak compared to him. But then he realizes that what he struck was merely a copy created by the bubblefish spirit. Looking back, fear is visible on his face at that exact moment, because our protagonist is beside his companion Maiju. Realizing this, the demon promptly declares that the pink-haired girl's mask is something he must not take, and so he orders them to stop immediately. However, our boy simply prepares to devour her with as much disdain as possible, so the demon doesn't stand a chance of stopping him. In the distance, two people are watching the situation, and a girl calls out to the head of the department, questioning what's happening. This older man tells her to see for herself as a battle between two S-rank individuals is truly a clash between monsters. He then says to call the other commanders from the 6 hunting guilds to observe the scene, and if necessary, he himself will assist the boy. With that understood, we see another corner of the forest where a drone is flying overhead. Inside this object, a camera has been embedded to observe the scene. Other members from another guild state that he has already devoured a total of 4 masks, thus historically surpassing all previous experiments. However, the woman present affirms that this is the person chosen for her assassin guild. The difference between them is that normal players receive missions to defeat evil spirits, while they are given missions to hunt people. Both end up evolving in such distinct and different ways, which is why they are hated. And at this moment, the protagonist is chosen by the Assassin Guild, with his destiny being to become the king of that place. The man promptly orders his subordinate to get out of there as quickly as possible. And so we see the shadow attack the drone, destroying it instantly. The spirit thinks it is being suppressed by someone who is nearly at S rank, and his shadow manipulation is his final trump card. However, against the 7 abilities the protagonist has, it will be a difficult situation to gain an advantage or find an opportunity for a clean escape. There are 2 ways to escape, one being to use shadow teleportation, which is not the most viable, because having to move from one point to another can be dangerous due to the power of that pink-haired girl who might catch him in transit. On top of that, his enemy has teleportation via wind, acceleration, and immobilization, so it's impossible for him to easily escape the shadow domain. The second and better method is simply to wait to be pulled back into the realm of eternity, where our protagonist will follow him. Upon arriving in this world, humans are given a mission to defeat a spirit similar to theirs, and if they join with another S-rank creature, then they will survive. This is the best chance he has, so he will stay on the defensive to try and resolve this situation. Our protagonist tries to attack from behind, but is easily blocked by the absolute defense of this demon. Soon, the creature explains that even if he uses the bubblefish illusion, it will end up being useless because his domain is impenetrable. However, our boy promptly says he will use the miracle of the incarnation of the god of luck. Following that, he uses the wind god Boreas at the same time, further frightening the ghost watching the scene. Our boy lifts just one finger in the direction of the monster in front of him. Then he unleashes the north wind, fired with a gigantic energy that engulfs the entire burning scene at that very moment. From behind where the demon is being thrown, our protagonist promptly appears to finish the situation once and for all. However, he ends up being stopped by the shadow domain coming from that filthy demon who wielded a sword. Having escaped the situation, the spirit promptly states that even though the other is S-rank, his combat experience is still very limited. For a long time, the young man repeatedly tried using illusions to lure him, but he didn't even dare get close to the shadow domain. Even if he keeps sending these illusions, after some time they will all end up being destroyed, no matter how long it takes. He can keep doing this all day without delay while our protagonist observes. But suddenly, he notices something that terrifies him immensely, because the boy is surrounded by a purple aura all around his body at this very moment. He then remembers that this can only mean one thing in this situation. It is the incarnation of the miracle of that sleepy girl in the cloak. Feeling a touch on his shoulder, he turns around completely frightened and ready to strike. However, our protagonist uses the paralysis spell again so that he cannot move. The demon realizes he's immobilized due to this being who is stronger than the girl before. However, he thinks that thing in the sky is nothing more than an illusion made from memories, and that the protagonist's body was actually hit because of his domain. And so he smiles, saying that he has enough practice and combat experience to explain why his shadow domain is called impenetrable defense, because it attacks any form of life that enters the area as a high priority enemy. The spirit promptly begins to move, realizing that he has finally managed to strike our boy. Then he starts shouting for him to see the difference in their combat levels at this moment. He says he will return the same words to him, that he deserves to lose above all else. However, suddenly our boy's hand pierces through the shadows all at once. This makes the creature widen its eyes once again in shock, because our protagonist survived all those attacks and uses the paralysis spell once again. The boy simply removes his dirty cloak while the creature realizes he took all the hits from his domain head-on. Possessed Kyun promptly stretches his hand backward in a motion easily understood. With his weapon in hand, the creature prepares to deliver an extremely powerful blow to the demon in front of him. The spirit is instantly terrified and curses in his thoughts upon realizing he cannot even move a muscle due to the paralysis spell cast. However, the protagonist's blade simply touches his shoulder in a surprisingly gentle, almost premeditated way. Frightened, the demon questions what is being done as he doesn't understand what is happening. But after thinking for a short moment, he realizes that the situation has just gotten much worse due to what our protagonist says next, which is the fact that a countdown has begun from 1 with that single attack from our boy. The second strike is promptly delivered with the same intensity, so as not to harm him unnecessarily as he is merely building up. And the spirit realizes these are the 4 guaranteed death strikes and starts sweating cold to the point of feeling his skin peel off his body. With the third strike delivered, the boy throws his arm back with extreme confidence, preparing to deliver the final blow and end this fight once and for all. We are taken to a scene where we see the protagonist's friend sinking, with someone begging to be saved. The girl recognizes her as her friend Ning Lan, who is there at that moment. However, this person ends up choking her, questioning why everyone around her died and only she survived. And in a demonic tone, she declares that now she will take her to die together, where they will go to hell, thus bringing the torment of the realm of eternity to an end and putting a stop to all the girl's nightmares. But suddenly she wakes up after being so injured. Rising up while spitting ketchup, she declares that she's not dead and realizes she's not in the realm of eternity at that moment. She quickly reasons that the sword ghost didn't have time to finish her, so someone must be fighting him and wonders who it could be. Until suddenly she sees our protagonist in the area about to finish the creature in front of him. But when she looks at him, it's clear that he's not the Kinan she knows, as he resembles the aura of the chief commander of the place. Suddenly we hear the fourth strike, and a white light begins to form throughout the entire area, frightening everyone. Quickly, a jet resembling black and white ink is fired a single time as a final attack. The girl notices that the shockwave feels strangely familiar. It's the same strike that marked the faceless demon when they first met. Even so, it's a terrifying power with immense destructive capacity in our boy's hands. After that, the protagonist begins to breathe heavily, kneeling on the ground completely exhausted. His mask starts returning to its normal state as he coughs as hard as he can to expel impurities, which are in fact the masks of his friends that fall to the ground even after having been devoured. The ghost in front of him says he made a splendid attack, but it was frustrating to see the end. If he hadn't hidden in the shadow of the critical moment, he would probably have been disintegrated on the spot, and that failure will only bring him death. Since the sword user is classified as an S-rank soul, these injuries aren't enough to kill him and will soon regenerate in a few minutes. He managed to reach the edge of his level, but due to his physical wounds, the young man will end up unable to use as many divine powers as before. However, it is admitted that the method of devouring others' masks was extremely desperate, but he was really lucky to have managed to cause so much damage in the end. However, our boy won't have the chance to use that ink again because he won't even be able to move. Assuming that the boy's luck has finally run out and pulling out his broken sword, the demon declares that he will take the life of the man who nearly killed him. Promptly, the spirit prepares to attack our protagonist head-on with a thrust coming from above. Tense, the boy can only watch the blade coming toward him without any kind of hope. But suddenly we see that the spirit's consciousness has been taken elsewhere, leaving him partially confused. With wide eyes, he can only question what is happening at that very moment. He wonders what this place is until he hears a voice saying that he really thinks he'll be fine after taking a hit from that ink. The demon promptly asks who is speaking, until suddenly he sees a giant hand holding a brush in front of him, as if it were the manifestation of a monster itself. The voice quickly understands that the name Sword Ghost is not real, but affirms that it will be enough to take at least half the life of this trash that is present. As soon as the sword hits the ground, the voice commands this villain to vanish into nothingness. Our protagonist, watching this scene, can only wonder what is happening as he doesn't understand. The creature kneels on the ground, breathing heavily, as he can feel his life being drained. Suddenly, his throat starts to swell as if something's about to come out. And so several crystals end up being vomited from within the creature that devoured human souls. Promptly, the ghost begins to vomit more energy in an extremely painful way. His entire body exhales the energy he had absorbed from all the human souls he had consumed. Our boy wonders what is going on as he believes the last blow shouldn't have hurt him that much. When it finally ends, we see that a mini hurricane has formed with the dark energy in the sky. The spirit continues breathing heavily while his form has been degraded. Sweating from exhaustion, he starts cursing our protagonist as much as he can. Then he screams that he is the only one who deserves to die in this entire situation, declaring that he will kill him as quickly as possible. After all this time, this spirit managed to at least break the S-rank limit and still ended up defeated because of the protagonist's dirty methods. However, this man still ends up victorious in the end without noticing a hand approaching. It is an attack coming directly from Chen Fi, who strikes the creature in front of her with force. She then calls the protagonist, saying the creature is vulnerable and that she wants the mask as quickly as possible so they can end this situation. The demon jumps back, realizing that the girl didn't die as he had previously thought, and he reasons that they are always ruining all of his plans like cursed parasites feeding off his food. The girl promptly prepares an extremely powerful attack coming directly from the heavens toward the creature. He tries to block it with his arm but fails as he is too weak after all the previous blows. Realizing this, he states that he can't even withstand another attack from an A rank, so his death might be near. The girl promptly considers using her ability to freeze the spirit before he can escape into the shadows, but she realizes it might already be too late and the creature is about to get away. But suddenly someone arrives and grabs the spirit from behind with all their strength. It's Uncle Chaliang, who tells his companion to deliver the attack as quickly as possible. Suddenly, taking advantage of the situation, the girl charges all at once using her sword as a piercing weapon, thus managing to strike with such force that it even hits the older uncle who is holding the demon. The creature spits ketchup as he feels the damage pierce his heart intensely. Both fall to the ground and the girl becomes immensely worried about the member of her group. She declares that she will contact a doctor as quickly as possible, and the older man says it's just a scratch, so she shouldn't worry, she should focus on the sword demon. The young woman promptly says it was a direct blow to his heart, so there is no chance of him escaping or even surviving. Suddenly, Manju arrives at the scene, startling the girl, who realizes she is already awake. The girl, picking up the fragments, notices that they are the souls devoured by that spirit. Suddenly, the two who were observing the situation from afar arrive, asking if they need help. They then introduce themselves as the hunting team from Radiant Silver and say they came there to assist. The girl promptly states that they are the thieves who want to steal all the reward after having done nothing in the actual battle. However, the protagonist's friend asks if no other guild came to help and says she needs a doctor as soon as possible to help her friend. The girl in the white cloak claims to be a doctor and therefore will be able to help in this kind of situation. Our protagonist suddenly gets up, noticing something that leaves him dissatisfied. He questions why the system is no longer reading any of the other soul fragments present in this cluster, to which the young woman replies that a total of 26 were regurgitated and all of them have already been read in the end. The most important ones, which were his sisters and Professor Shen Pan's, were also just read. But the boy says that's not enough, confusing the young woman who doesn't understand what he means. Kiam screams in anger that his mother wasn't mentioned at any moment, and that leaves him completely desperate. Suddenly, a portal appears, confusing everyone at the scene because it's unusual. And suddenly, the spirit jumps in that direction, letting out a sigh of relief. The girl questions what's happening. After all, that shouldn't be possible since the creature's heart was pierced. Calculated, the demon states that he waited for the right time and the realm of eternity finally came to take him home. Our protagonist may have won this battle, but the ghost still hasn't lost altogether. And the time will come when he will slaughter that sword girl to make her pay once and for all for what was done. Our protagonist suddenly begins to rise, shouting for him to stop. Holding his sword with extreme aggression, he declares that he wants back what belongs to him. With tears in his eyes, he can only curse that demon, demanding that he return his mother's soul as fast as possible. Everyone tries to stop him, but the boy charges forward using his acceleration ability at that exact moment. His companions warn that the portal will lead to an unstable dungeon, and you won't be in the same place as that demon. With a final scream, we see the portal finally collapse in that location. And with the resulting explosion, all that remains is a cloud of smoke and the image of an empty field without our protagonist. In the next scene, we can see the realm of eternity in a place we've never seen before, a desert. The portal suddenly appears in that location to deliver one of the individuals. It is the sword spirit, who promptly uses the shadow to enter the place. And as soon as he emerges from it, we can clearly see that he is struggling to breathe in this situation. He says he ended up getting stabbed again by our protagonist while on his way to this location. But when he looks ahead, he realizes this is the temple of the god of darkness. It's unfortunate that he didn't reach this place because of that blow from our protagonist, but he should be able to walk through the palace since his power still holds honor. Suddenly, someone appears, questioning who this strange shadow clown is standing before her. And she asks how his experience was in the human world. But seeing that he is weak, she says he truly came to insult them. She then questions how he dares to dirty the floor of this sacred temple with his own blood, and this is the fifth goddess of darkness, Sly. She promptly says she wants to hear the answer quickly or else she will break the mouth of the spirit standing before her in half. Then the creature promptly states that some unexpected incidents ended up happening. However, the octopus states that this is already the second time he has gathered all the shadow gods just to come up with another excuse. But the shadow demon promptly begs for more time as he is close to reaching S rank and will then be able to claim the 8th throne. However, he is startled to hear that this might not be possible after all. He won't last that long. Suddenly, a creature appears behind him. It's Castrella, who is to eliminate the intruder immediately. The god says this simple guard is only at the peak of a rank and therefore should be able to entertain him. But he questions why this arrogant being can't even move in front of him and says that the other doesn't deserve the 8th seat. It's said that if he wants to run, he can do it as fast as possible, but he should keep in mind that he is still a clown in this place. Soon, the sword demon shouts at the god, telling him not to be so arrogant because in 3 years he would be able to surpass him quickly. But with one final insult, we see that the creature has already made the decision to simply execute the insolent one before him. The system informs that all items have been sent to the god's inventory, who then declares that there are no last words for him. Next, we see another place in the realm of eternity, a stable dungeon of the deep sea. Our protagonist falls into that location, feeling slightly tired. Promptly, the screen appears explaining that he won't be able to leave until he completes the objective, and some potions were given as a way to adjust in this 1 minute. The boy promptly grabs the flask while thinking that he should have finished that creature at that exact moment before being pulled into the portal. And as soon as he consumes it, he thinks he needs to calm down a bit to better think through the situation. He soon says that his intuition was correct after all. A rank B dungeon is prepared for players at his level, so the highest level won't surpass that of the player. According to the general design, the creature should not exceed rank B, nor be lower than rank D. As he is someone from rank E, then he should have enough strength to fight rank D monsters and therefore survive without any difficulty. In other words, his focus should be on the weakest ones to gain experience and then move according to the difficulty. He was really hurt, but the potion healed him completely, so it can be said that now he has a total of 3 lives. His plan should focus on easy and isolated targets, so he's going to start subtly. Suddenly, the countdown ends and a wave suddenly forms. And it makes our boy confused upon realizing that his oxygen will be limited. Since it's been detected that the young man is currently in a dungeon, it is said that he can use a different vision mode. Promptly, the young man decides to accept, thus activating this function. And it can clearly be seen that now his perspective looks a lot like a video game, and he says this is quite useful. Far from there, he notices something suddenly approaching. Hiding behind a rock, the boy wonders what rank the monster approaching might be. And as soon as it appears, we see that it's a rank E shell with hands being at the same level as him. The system informs that his oxygen will be consumed every second depending on his actions, which the boy immediately understands. After all, he's still human. But then he says he must follow the plan to defeat that creature, so he uses his invisibility together with his acceleration. Judging by the shape of the creature, it's said that it might have good defense, but it can't see him, so this is the moment to attack it. But suddenly, something ends up approaching, catching his attention. Looking in that direction, he wonders what is coming from behind. Suddenly, a harpoon ends up hitting the monster below, even though it was aiming at our protagonist at that moment. Soon, the boy wonders if there are fights among the others, and the system informs that he's been hit by a little bit of water poison. The boy reasons that the dungeon shouldn't have monsters attacking each other, so it's said that the focus is not on the other creature, but instead on our protagonist, who manages to dodge another strike that barely misses him. The creature is a C-rank ghost fish, and the young man realizes that even with his invisibility active, he's still visible to the monster. The system tries to inform him that his oxygen is already below 60%, so he must act quickly. We then return to the human world, where we see the massive burning of the forest. A man approaches, rudely asking if that boy belongs to their group. The woman replies that he only wanted to join the hunting team, but since he found his mother's soul fragment, he probably won't want to join anymore. Realizing this, the older man says they could make a deal so that both sides come out with an advantage. The girl is confused by this, as she understands it might be harmful in the end. The man says that today's events have resulted in a major problem for the human world, and because of that, all the guilds are getting into trouble due to the revelations. If the public and the police demand explanations, then they can help by cleaning up this entire mess so that they'll be left alone. However, he states that Chiam must in the end be allowed to join his team and thus become part of his guild. Suddenly, a stranger says that this executive really carries an air of dominance in his words and actions. However, the girl narrowly escaped death, and so it could be disadvantageous to take advantage of her vulnerability, this being the leader of the Serpent Guild. The older man then asks if he doesn't want to recruit the child, to which the other says yes, but that he has better offers. He then says they'll help with the whole situation and offer 200 A-rank black ghost stones. These are extremely rare and not even big guilds are able to possess them, so it's not a number easily obtained by anyone. It was heard that the head of their guild is having problems and therefore can't represent them, and that Chen Fei should be the one to speak. The girl says this is extremely irresponsible because they're simply using the young man as an object and have no real interest in bargaining for someone's life. She says she appreciates the efforts that will be put into healing and cleaning the area, but the rewards should be saved for another day. But suddenly, someone begins to laugh seriously at everything that was just said. It's Meiju, who finds it laughable that they're offering gifts to a dead man who entered a B-rank dungeon. Then with a serious tone, she says that Chiam even dared to risk his life and existence for her protection. So anyone who wants to use him as an object better be ready to have their skull split in two. Back to our young man, he thinks there's no need to keep using invisibility since he can be seen anyway. Even though it's a C-rank spirit, there's still a chance to find a visible weakness. And he states that no matter how tough the body is, if he hits the eye, he'll likely be able to cause damage, even if it's superficial. However, he realizes that the enemy is extremely slippery, and his weapon underwater is much heavier and harder to handle at full potential. He soon notices that the monster's tail has retracted and another attack is coming his way, so he can't dodge. but by using his sword with great skill, he's able to block the strike in one move. He then thinks that it was extremely difficult to perform that last action, and his remaining oxygen is under 26%. He must remain calm and not panic, because the best thing to do is to think, and he realizes that illusions will probably be useless in this situation. Even with the 100-foot strength enchantment, he's still swimming too slowly and won't be able to dodge another attack. The only way is if he can use the Faceless One's cannon, but it takes a long time to charge. However, suddenly he widens his eyes upon realizing he can simply do something that was right in front of him all along. He'll only have one chance. After all, his oxygen is finally running out, and that's why this is a gamble he has to win in this last second. And so the attack is coming at him once again, fully aimed at his head. But the young man is able to block it while dodging the strike that would likely have been fatal and decapitated him. He's taking advantage of the retraction and says this is the best chance he has to use the faceless laser right in the spirit's face. And so he uses his sword to gain some distance while the system informs him that the attack's firing point has finally been reached. Our boy gets excited and tells the spirit to take this point blank to see the damage. And suddenly, the attack manages to pierce the creature's flesh, creating a huge hole in its body. The system states that he successfully killed the spirit that could sense killing intent and has earned the ability to breathe underwater. He quickly realizes that even the weapon was granted to him, one that causes venomous bleeding damage, applying percentage-based damage to his enemies. With this new ability in hand, he says he can finally continue moving forward in this situation. But suddenly, he feels a massive killing intent coming toward the place where he is at that very moment. He realizes that an overwhelming number of those monsters are suddenly heading in his direction. But then he thinks he should just stay calm because he must not show his killing intent in order not to reveal himself to them. All he needs to do is imagine himself walking through the water as if he were inside an aquarium tunnel so he won't be attacked. With this sudden break in his killing intent, he pauses to reason what could have made all those creatures come in his direction. He then realizes that it's a rank B hunter shark, the boss of that area. The young man observes this, realizing the killing intent of that monster is high, and wonders if this is part of the sword ghost's plan from earlier. But suddenly, something flies through the air and pierces the fish's chest. And the system congratulates our boy for having completed the dungeon, saying that he can return to the human world through the boss room's teleport. The boy observes this scene confused, realizing that it was stones thrown at the creature that managed to kill it at that very moment. We then see someone arriving, stating that he doesn't seem to be any kind of black ghost or one of the gods. And the newcomer orders him to start explaining how he managed to enter his personal dungeon at this exact moment. The man promptly says they should talk once they're out of the ocean and tells them to head to the boss room. He asks if this is his first time in a dungeon, to which the boy says yes, since he was trying to chase a ghost that ended up being pulled into a portal. The newcomer realizes the boy must be of a very high rank to end up facing someone so far above his level to accomplish such a feat. However, he's told that the boy is only rank E, which draws the older man's curiosity as he asks if he's at least in someone's guild. The boy says he was receiving support from Black Eagle, and her leader wanted him to join, but he only wants to recover his mother's and sister's souls. Realizing this, the man notes that the protagonist is probably being used as a pawn in the plans of that miserable man. He then asks if the boy has any water-breathing potion, and he's surprised to hear that the boy doesn't need one because he already killed a fish-type ghost and learned the ability to breathe underwater. Thinking deeply, the man pauses and then asks if the boy is a disciple of the god of hell, and afterward wants to know his name, which is answered Kuan Yi. This draws even more attention from the newcomer, who ends up surprised. Laughing, he says he arrived at the right time, the right place in the end, leaving our boy confused. It is soon explained that this is Ping Yan Chuan, an independent S-rank hunter, and he's going to buy a drink for the protagonists so they can talk. Outside, we see two girls watching, saying that their boss still hasn't come out of the place. Then they say that an S-rank shouldn't have any difficulty clearing a B-rank dungeon like that. And her companion says they better be careful, as this could be taking long due to some kind of problem. Suddenly, the man appears, saying the boss was running all over the area, so it took a while. The two girls ask if he got the rewards, and he says yes, but there was nothing of value in the entire place. And the redhead, on the other hand, says the man smells like fish and therefore should take a bath as soon as possible. Ping calls our protagonist over, saying all those girls are his teammates, and since they've just come out of the ocean, it's better for them to talk in the bath. Sometime later, we see a sauna where the two are together, and the older man finally understands the entire situation. He says that if the King of Hell hadn't helped, then probably everything would have gone completely differently from how it happened. The man states that he is investigating an assassin organization and therefore wants the protagonist's help, and in return, he will help him get the fragment of his mother's soul. The Black Eagle Guild is probably using him as some kind of pawn, and even if he joins the guild, they'll keep him on the hook to keep working. However, this is the #1 independent hunter, and he has enough power and resources to put a bounty on the dark web, so it will be easy to find. But suddenly, in a comedic tone, he says he was trying to be a nice guy and his cigarette went out, confusing our boy who doesn't even understand what the situation is about. The man realizes that the situation is really complicated. After all, the protagonist's sister is someone who's already been under investigation by that guild for a long time. Soon, the boy gets confused, questioning what is being planned as he doesn't understand how his little sister is involved in this situation. But Ping tells him not to get so desperate. After all, if he thinks about it, his sister must have certain connections with the realm of eternity. Our boy, for a moment, remembers that the first ghost he faced used bait that looked exactly like his sister. The man says that's exactly the proof he needed to understand the situation. He then explains that bubble fish can't transform into someone they've never seen, and they even need to stare at the target to replicate them. Honestly, they had many reports of these fish using the appearance of a girl, and after some investigation, they discovered it was his sister, someone who frequently enters the realm of eternity and ignores the ghosts, saying she's not interested in leveling up but in killing people. The boy gives several arguments, saying his sister is a schoolgirl, so there's no way she could enter the realm of eternity without him knowing. And the man says there might be more to this situation than he originally thought, and he needs to investigate further. But it's important the boy understands one thing. The news about his sister has already spread all over the dark web, and there are already thousands of bounties on her head that can't be ignored. If any top-tier mercenary is called in, how will he be able to protect his sister in the end, as she'll be hunted down as a potential assassin? This man is capable of protecting her and giving her all the support he can, and that's something personal that he needs to resolve this year. There's also another option, and he says that he has disciples, and that he can take care of the boy to make him stronger. If he really wanted to kill the boy's sister, he would have done it a long time ago. But he wants to make one thing clear. He doesn't want to kill innocents without proof. The boy understands this, realizing it's the only way to make this happen, and says he'll keep one thing very clear. Because if anything happens to his beloved sister, he'll hold the man in front of him fully responsible. So both of them end up sealing this pact to form an alliance founded on mutual trust. Suddenly, we are taken to the central hospital where we see a room in the facility. Professor Chen Pang suddenly wakes up from his death-sleep syndrome after a long time. Ken Fei promptly asks if he's awake, catching the older man's attention. The girl explains that they managed to retrieve the fragment of his soul and of his wife's, who will wake up soon. The man is happy and thanks her as much as he can. However, the girl states that the spirit devoured 100 souls and only 26 were returned. So if his hands are stained for the rest of his life until they find the creature in the depths of hell. But suddenly, she ends up noticing something that makes her eyes widen for a moment. She then remembers our protagonist who said that people born in poverty have to fight desperately just to stay alive. And with extreme anger, she says that now there are 75 lives in the hands of this miserable man who made the pact. Suddenly, we hear a familiar voice asking if this is room 1138. And upon opening the door, this newcomer calls out to Chen Fei, who is surprised to see such a presence. It's our protagonist who says he's back and wishes good morning to his best friend in this whole situation. The girl panics and starts crying uncontrollably upon seeing that the one who means so much to her is alive right in front of her. And as a shock of reality, she charges toward him and punches him in the head, making him scream in pain. But then she hugs him upon realizing that this isn't a dream, but reality, confusing our boy. She explains that he must not face danger alone again, and if he does, she'll never forgive him. To which the boy responds, saying she's really a violent girl after all, for caring so much about him. But then he asks if she managed to see his sister, because he needs to speak with her immediately to check on her situation. The woman promptly says that the young girl took the fragment recently, but is still unconscious in the room next door and was with Pang to discuss some matters. Our boy, on the other hand, states that there's no one in the room next door, and we then see the top of the hospital where the morning is already so beautiful. A spirit approaches the girl, saying that her brother has already arrived at the location after leaving the dungeon, saying that this was more than expected, making the girl understand the whole situation and maintain a cold tone. The cat says she should be more careful next time. After all, she got herself into great danger and could have even caused her own death. However, the girl claims that this wouldn't be possible as her prediction never fails, and then says they should go because her brother is already calling her. Then she says that all of this is part of the plan that had already been foreseen. After some time, the man asks if the protagonist's sister is okay. The other believes she is, and there has been no sign that she's different, so he keeps thinking they're looking for the wrong person. And the man says that ever since he entered the realm of eternity, his sister has had certain more frequent activities around him, so it's good to keep that in mind for now. But for now, they should both observe the situation and see what's happening, so they can solve everything more clearly. The boy asks where they're going, to which the man says not to rush because he's finishing his explanation. It is said that he made sure to place a bounty on the spirit that devoured his mother's soul, totaling 1 million souls in coin form. And then he screams in anger that each of those is worth real money, and because of that, he had to kill about 10 million just to get that amount. They definitely managed to find him, but it's just a matter of time, and the protagonist's mother will have to wait a while, and they will continue training until then. Finally, they both arrive at the place, and the protagonist asks what's in this scene that seems so ordinary, to which it is said that within this place lies a huge secret, and so he asks Scan to follow him. It is then explained that this is a dungeon called the White Room, and only 9 have been discovered across the entire globe. Inside this place, there are no obstacles, and the map never regenerates, so it's just a vast, completely white space. In this scenario, there is only one type of ghost known as modules, and they will always be weak and have no special abilities. However, these black spirits are valuable because they can drop some soul fragments of your level and can even drop soul coins. Still, one must keep in mind that these killer monsters end up increasing your time on Earth. As you've probably seen, whenever you eliminate a spirit in the realm of eternity, your life in the normal world is always restored enough, and you've probably forgotten that. Killing such creatures will significantly increase your time on Earth, and if he keeps doing it for at least one day, then he won't have to worry for the entire month. But the White Room can only spawn D-rank monsters, so when you reach C rank, the experience and life extension become practically null. However, for someone extremely rare and weak like our protagonist, who is in E rank, this place is a gold mine that can yield millions of crystals. There's just one rule: he cannot trigger the boss room, or he'll have to fight to the death, and once it's completed, the dungeon will be cleared and disappear. They believe this happens because this room is some sort of bug, and that's why it's forbidden to open the boss door in any way. He even decides to share a curiosity, which is the fact that his friend from Black Eagle gave this guild at the cost of his life in the end. Furthermore, there's another point, which is the fact that there's another person who will be leveling up alongside the protagonist, someone of D rank. With both entering the place, the man decides to introduce them, telling them to come closer, saying that both will stay there to increase their strength, so they should get along. The man promptly leaves, saying he has nothing else to say and will be on his way, and our protagonist quickly tries to stop him, telling him to wait a minute. However, suddenly he feels an extreme killing intent calling for his attention. It turns out to be a spirit that has already appeared and is ready to attack our boy, who is surprised by the speed of its emergence. The blonde promptly tells our boy to let him handle the monsters first, because as soon as he reaches C rank, he'll give him all the space he needs. But the young man puts on his mask, confused by such a statement. He then uses his speed enhancement enchantment to finish the creature at an unbelievable speed. He apologizes afterwards, saying he has reasons that require him to gain experience quickly. As expected, these monsters have no life or defensive attributes, meaning their resistance to poison is 0. The other man, on the other hand, clenches his fists that begin to ignite, saying he'll go all in, and thinks to himself that the boy is truly unbelievable. We then see another place where 2 girls are accompanying the mercenary, and one of them questions why they were brought there. The one with purple hair, on the other hand, says that it was already explained, calling her companion completely neglectful. And in a comedic tone, she says that the master is someone from this Black Eagle guild, making her companion say she's never heard of it. But then both change the subject, saying that the man in front of them has a personality full of killing intent, and that they should be careful. Suddenly, the long-haired guy says that the 2 should listen to him. He tells them to split up and report any strange incident. One should stay below, and the other should go to the top. And if he doesn't return in 10 minutes, then both should run as fast as they can. As he enters, a guard tries to warn him that this is Black Eagle Company territory, and that he cannot enter. However, the man continues advancing, increasingly irritating the guard. And suddenly, someone arrives asking who dares to enter such a place, then tells the old man to leave because that place is not appropriate for him. And Mr. Ping promptly states that not recognizing him must mean he's a new member who joined during his absence. We then see the meeting room, where one of the men states that after being devoured by Qian, the masks regressed significantly. At first they were cracked, but it was noticed that the manifestation of miracles became increasingly difficult and even failed at times. One of the executives states that they can't let this situation continue, as they can't even use the protagonist as a weapon in this kind of scenario. The blonde, on the other hand, starts wondering where Meiju is and why she hasn't arrived yet, until suddenly the wall explodes, throwing something inside. It turns out to be the girl, who lands on the table and ends up sitting on the floor. The white-haired one asks the guard if an enemy attack is happening and tells everyone to head to the conference room. However, the one responsible for this says that placing a B rank here is truly a mistake, thus assuming he has already taken care of all the details of this operation. With a cocky tone, he calls for Qian, asking if he wasn't the one who called him there and why they tried to stop him. To which the guild leader tells him to forget all that, as he's already caused enough trouble for his people. He knows that the protagonist is in this old man's hands and says that he can't stay with the boy. To which Ping replies that the young man is not an object, and he remembers that the blonde even stole his guild in the past. Taking off his glasses, the younger one says that he's touching a deep wound caused by a past that he himself committed. Shenfei arrives at the scene, saying he's late, and asks what's going on, until suddenly his eyes widen as he recognizes the person in front of him. He then calls him Captain Ping Yan Chuan. We see an image from 2 years ago where they meet in the realm of eternity. The girl tries to warn him that Team A can no longer handle the vast number of A-rank black spirits and therefore needs help. And the young woman observes the entire scene, realizing that all those high-level spirits ended up being killed by the captain alone. She then says that the situation is critical and they must arrive as quickly as possible, and asks if they should at least send a retreat request. But the older man promptly states that he will personally support the team and she should stay there. He then says she must not enter any direct combat and, if necessary, will use her miracle incarnation to protect herself above all else. She even tries to refuse, but the man says these are strict orders and cannot be disobeyed. We then see another part of the realm of eternity, where there is a mountain split in half. One of the men states they can no longer hold back all the creatures and wonders where Captain Ping is. More than half of them are already dead or injured, so they can't hold out much longer. It is said that once they retreat, Captain Ping will likely arrive with an entire army to clean up the situation. However, until then, they must focus on strategies to stay alive and, most importantly, ensure their safety while carefully retreating. But suddenly, someone appears at their rear without warning, and a woman looking back wonders if it's her brother, the captain. She realizes it's actually a faceless A-rank spirit, and along with it, an entire horde has arrived at the location to begin the attack. With that in mind, the woman thinks she has no choice but to use her miracle incarnation, though she hasn't fully mastered it yet. But suddenly, a laser cannon flies past the side of her face, nearly decapitating her in the process. The attack ends up hitting the other members of the group, who let out desperate screams. Realizing this, there is no more time for hesitation, so she activates her miracle incarnation. It is of the god Gani Ganji, the spirit of water, saying she will sacrifice 80 to manage to kill 100 of them. And the dragon-like creature says that none of them will be able to take even one more step. Then, independently, the beast begins unleashing a massive water jet to eliminate all the monsters and ghosts in the area. The woman, on the other hand, thinks she can't hold out much longer. Maybe even 5 minutes won't be enough, so 2 minutes is the minimum she can endure until the end. Until suddenly someone arrives, touches her shoulder, and says it was a fine job. It's Captain Ping, who says he will take care of the rest of the situation for her. We then see 2 days later, where someone is shouting that the entire group was saved thanks to the water girl. However, the voice states they cannot change their objection that they lost a lot of money due to the irresponsibility of the woman who used her miracle incarnation. According to what was witnessed before Captain Ping's arrival, the young woman prioritized preserving her own life over that of her allies. Thus, they decide to exile her and keep Ping Yan Chun in the team that the girl used to command. Confused, the voice questions why he wouldn't want her, to which it is said he is sacrificing many people just to support Qian. This old man even managed to observe that the blonde was having a conversation with a strange person from the realm of eternity. All the evidence from the Assassin's Guild was removed from the scene, so it is claimed it can't be a coincidence. They then say maybe they are betraying him just to ensure the guild doesn't kill them after all this time. But then, in a calmer tone, he says that when the assassin arrives, he can go seek his own defense in the arms of that other man. The voice tries to warn that the Black Eagle Guild is a hunting team that oversees all authority in the area, but the man doesn't seem to care. It then says that Qian may even take his place, but he'll never be able to do half the work he has done all these years. It is already explained that the vast majority of participants who go to the realm of identity are searching for the ghosts. However, there is a very clear exception among all of them. Some people are given missions specifically to kill other players. These individuals tend to form gangs and thus create a sense of fear against the opponents who fall into their hands. Their main name is feared by those who know them. They are called the Guild of Assassins, where no one survives an encounter with them. After the incident, Ping Yan Chun ended up working as a delivery man and completed side missions in the realm of eternity. Yi Xiao Yu, on the other hand, went back to running her bar and helping the older man with information and rewards. But that only lasted for 6 months, as the woman was murdered in the realm of eternity by the assassins and never woke up again in the real world. In the end, she had no real relationships, so the only person who came to her funeral was Mr. Ping, who stood alone silently watching his friend. The Black Eagle team quickly heard about what happened and gave this man access to 3 white dungeons, worth millions to keep him quiet. Over the next 2 years, the evidence began to gradually disappear and Ping slowly distanced himself from the investigation. That is, until the protagonist's sister started to grow suspicious, giving the old man a glimmer of hope. Suddenly, the older man with a mohawk appears, saying that 2 members of the original team were killed in the real world. The blonde man says his colleague is highly suspicious of him, so they should go together this time to try and find some evidence. The man with blue hair promptly says they'll see what kind of tricks will be used to cover for him this time. He also asks Shen Fi to come as well so they can have a witness. As they get closer, they're told that the police are already intervening, so they need to observe from a distance. The older man senses something is wrong with the entire situation. That's because the Guild of Assassins only kills in the realm of eternity, and to target their victims in person would require tremendous effort. So he wonders if this was just an accident, since that's not how this guild typically operates. Everyone involved was wearing rank B masks, and it could have even seemed like they were trying to take on some armed thugs. Pain begins to question what exactly they're trying to accomplish in the real world, but then suddenly something catches his attention, making him look in a certain direction. It's the protagonist's sister, apparently hiding among some clothes nearby, and she clearly already knows those two men are present at the scene. The older man immediately shouts, trying to get her to stop right where she is. But as he approaches, he sees that there's no one there anymore, as if she mysteriously vanished. He starts wondering where she went because something feels off, and they ask if he saw anything. It's clear that the cat who accompanied the protagonist's sister is still there, while the old man says it was nothing. We see a strange mark on his leg, and the cute creature lets out a sigh, as if it had all been part of a plan. We are then taken back to the trapdoor the protagonist went through, and we see someone cursing inside the portal as something clearly seems to be going wrong. It's the blonde man who says that this kid is not normal. He wonders who he could be because the whole thing is just too strange. No matter how good he is, it should be impossible for him to take out so many monsters at that insane speed. That way, they'll be able to reach rank C and surpass him soon. And his thoughts feel intense. He says he can't let that happen. He starts thinking of something, but then looks back and remembers the boss's door. He can simply use an item at this moment. Watching the protagonist, he realizes the boy really enjoys killing monsters, so he decides to give his friend the biggest content possible to fill his heart. He'll release the boss of the area first and then use teleportation to escape, so Kinyi won't be able to get out. And once the dungeon is opened, it'll be locked and no one will be able to enter, so the young man will just be left there waiting for death. The boy quickly understands the situation and wonders to himself whether Uncle Ping didn't tell him this is the boss room. However, the blonde man seems to ignore that and starts forcing the objective. Right away, he opens his mouth and tells him to stop talking so much nonsense like he's doing now. Our protagonist watches the scene and wonders what level the boss that's about to appear will be, but decides to simply wait for his Uncle Ping to come help. But then he becomes alarmed upon sensing something, an intense murderous aura. He immediately tells his companion to move away from the door, but he fails to notice a giant blade flying in his direction, cutting his precious one. The blonde, with blood spilling from his mouth, uses his teleportation at that exact moment to escape, and so his soul detaches from the dungeon, pulling him outside. Our boy, on the other hand, hears the sound of bells ringing like some sort of ritual. He wonders what's going on as the modules are being sucked into the boss room. Soon we see a wave of creatures pouring into that unknown space. The aura grows heavier as the doors continue to open wider and wider. A hand ends up settling into that place, making the atmosphere even more intense. Our boy stares upward and says he's going to die soon. But then he faces the creature before him, not looking particularly surprised. And so he wonders to himself what kind of aberration this is and why it seems so weak. Outside, someone is heard complaining about having drunk too much and questioning why they have to wait for a rookie. The redhead says this place reeks of something like blood and asks if the boss ended up dirtying the place with blood, to which her friend says she can go ask him. But suddenly, she calls out to Feng Xinyi and asks if she's sober, and her companion thinks she is. However, the girl doesn't think so because she's hallucinating a weird guy lying on the ground. We're taken back to where our protagonist declares that this creature is way too weak to be the boss. Its strength is lacking, and the murderous intent from before, that blade, was far more intense. But he doesn't need to dwell on that now, because he still needs to take down the monster, so he charges in with his dagger. Then suddenly, the sound of a bell rings once more, and a massive blade pierces the head of the monster in front of him. Our young man says it happened again and wonders how long that sword must be to reach all the way here. He then tries to exit the dungeon, but the system informs him that it's impossible. He must complete this area first. Chaim Yi, observing this, realizes the blonde got caught in a trap, just as he suspected. The teleport portal turned red again, meaning it's locked and there's no way for him to escape. Even if it's a death sentence, maybe he can defeat the boss. He has a poison weapon that deals percentage-based damage, so it's not impossible. He steps into the room, his shadow stretching out behind him. And then we see the massive creature congratulating him for finally arriving and calling him the king of hell in that moment. Our protagonist asks if it knows his name, as he doesn't understand how that's possible. But the creature says it knows him because a woman told it she would see him, though it didn't actually believe it would happen. Our young man grips the poisoned dagger and wonders who that person might be who gave the warning. But he's told it doesn't matter. Such things are useless here. In this place, names are irrelevant. What truly matters is that he wears the mask of the king of hell, which guarantees everything. They'll fight to the death, and if he kills the creature, he can stop the prophecy from coming true. And with that, the creature screams to begin, for them to cut each other in half. Our young man sees the massive attack coming toward him, his eyes widening for a moment. We cut to the outside where his uncle finally arrives and asks what's going on. His friend says he's finally here and she thought the old man had caused all this. She says she's doing her best to try to save that idiot in there, but she's not sure if she'll be able to wake him up. However, Han Yan tells her to shut up. There isn't a single person who can't be saved when he's around. Right away, the blue-haired man notices that the teleport portal has turned red, meaning our protagonist is still inside. And so he prays in his mind that the boy can hold out until a chance appears. Our boy, on the other hand, notices a detail. The creature is named Error, Xuanyi then realizes that maybe his uncle's theory was right about this place being a mistake, but he quickly changes the subject and claims to have figured out the creature's weakness. His attacks are not even slightly capable of scratching it, which makes the poison damage nearly null. However, there's one spot that this monster protects above all else, which is probably its core. That core is the embryo held between the giant's hands. Its hand is completely pulled back as it prepares to strike, and as the dagger moves forward, we can see the baby's figure slightly moving. Soon we notice the child's eye partially shifting, as if it sensed something. Suddenly, our boy is engulfed in a massive golden light. He starts to close his eyes, realizing it's something extremely bright, like the sun itself. When he regains his senses and opens his eyes, he notices something very strange. He wonders where he is and why he's not wearing his mask in this situation. Someone approaches from behind, suddenly calling his name. The boy quickly asks who it is, as he doesn't recognize her at first. However, the stranger says he found something really interesting and asks if he can guess what it is. But then she tells him to return, because this is not a place he belongs to. She hands him an item, calling it a reward for having discovered the bug. Our young man suddenly opens his eyes, turning his attention back to what was happening earlier. He soon realizes that the tip of his dagger had been thrown toward the embryo, where the child moved almost as if it dodged the attack. However, the creature begins to scream, questioning how he dares to attack. Our boy thinks this is definitely not good as a massive hand flies in his direction. He is then thrown far away, crying out in pain for a moment. The system reports that an error has been detected and the code is completely scrambled. Our young man, stepping out from the smoke, wonders what's going on. The system begins reconstructing and checking all of the dungeon's assets. Because the coast was considered an error, it will replace it with another creature of equal strength. The screen then informs him that this rank B spirit will be more than enough to challenge him, and that he's earned a reward, which was sent to his inventory. Our protagonist realizes that this place truly is an anomaly, and that mysterious figure was probably an administrator of the area. But when he looks to the side, he notices the embryo wasn't deleted. He wonders whether the admin didn't notice it, but then says that's impossible since the error was protecting the embryo like it was the dungeon's boss. Still, he decides to defeat the creature in front of him first so he can check something else afterward. He opens his inventory, wondering what the faceless woman gave him. He discovers it's a vial of connection ink and realizes it could be useful. As soon as it's used, his aura flares up intensely, and its usage count drops to 1 out of 5. As expected, his chances increase dramatically with this new ability. Suddenly, we see someone waking up in a filthy place. He calls out for the girl with the guitar, calling her by the name Manhwa. Annoyed, the girl hits him with her instrument and tells him to call her that Aratha. Soon, the man with blue hair steps forward, asking if this brat knows what the White Dungeon means to him. He'd better explain everything down to the last detail to help them understand. And if he feels anything is being left out, he'll take him right back to hell just as easily as he brought him out. We see our protagonist again dodging the attacks coming his way. The centaur raises its front hooves to launch an attack. It then uses a war charge to create a massive shockwave. Our boy is surprised by it and takes a few steps back due to the powerful blow. But he then uses the cracked terrain to gain momentum and close in on his opponent. As he gets closer, he uses his weapon switch to equip his sword. With a strong stomp on the ground, he prepares to use his ink strike, a signature move tied to his mask. Then a massive beam of energy shoots from the black blade in his hands. And so the creature's helmet can be seen falling to the ground due to the massive damage it took. The system congratulates him for reaching rank C. All rewards have been sent to his inventory, and he can now leave the area. The young man realizes the embryo can be stored in his inventory, but upon opening it, it only shows a huge wall of text. He then decides to leave the place as quickly as possible to report what happened to his Uncle Ping. Soon, the man notices the gate has turned blue again, which seems to mean our protagonist is finally coming out. The young man thanks them for waiting, maintaining a confident smile on his face. However, the redhead says he must be joking with her because she recognizes him and calls him by name. On the other hand, our protagonist, upon seeing her, has the same reaction and calls her Hanya Na. In a cafe, the old man is surprised to learn they knew each other before anything else. The girl explains they used to be neighbors before she had to move away after the school entrance exams. Our protagonist asks how she died, to which it's said she was in an elevator accident that fell from the 20th floor. In the end, when she exited the realm of eternity, she walked out covered in blood, which started a trend online and turned her into a celebrity. Then with a shy laugh, she says it's really embarrassing to keep introducing herself and asks her friend to say something too. The young woman introduces herself as Fan Xin Yi, saying she doesn't want to get into the details of how she died, and asked our protagonist to take good care of her. The older man quickly says her friend used to talk a lot about the protagonist, calling him a childhood friend she wanted to ask out. Embarrassed, the girl throws a cup at her boss's head, telling him to shut his mouth. He then changes the subject and reveals that they will be a team from now on, and the blonde was supposed to join but became useless, so he was dismissed. Soon everyone leaves the place, with the older man saying his focus now will be on accumulating lifespan. We quickly see another location where someone is walking around in a hoodie despite the intense heat. It's the same blonde from earlier, thinking he had terrible luck that this kid suddenly showed up and stole everything he had built, along with his pride as a rank D. He barely has any lifespan left because he didn't receive any reward from the White Dungeon, so he must find a place to enter the realm of eternity. But soon he begins to feel tense and has a bad feeling, sensing that someone has been following him since the supermarket. Turning his head back, he wonders who it could be but doesn't see anyone approaching. Then we see a newcomer holding ropes, ready to capture this idiot who thinks he's going crazy. After some time, we're taken to the realm of eternity where a red moon is rising. Bats can be seen flying in the sky, each having only one eye as a distinctive trait. Suddenly, they are shot down by numerous green arrows that pierce through them effortlessly. Our protagonist asks what ability the girl used, and she explains it's the blessing of Daedalus. Her mask is that of the demigod Icarus, and she can deal massive damage with 100 arrows against multiple enemies, but channeling all that power into a single shot consumes a lot of lifespan. Our protagonist asks what that is, which surprises the healer, as he managed to survive without knowing it. It's explained that this is the time he has left before entering the realm of eternity, and inside the place, it recovers gradually. However, dealing damage or taking any action drains a large amount this time, and he might not even be able to use his abilities. The main reason it's called lifespan is because if it runs out, you die, and that forces anyone to be cautious when using their powers. Around them, something is seen moving along the ground in their direction. It's a red hand slowly approaching with caution, but then it suddenly leaps toward them, saying they won't be able to say a word in its presence. However, our boy turns around upon sensing its murderous intent and strikes with his dagger, saying the enemy has already arrived. Raising his foot, the system announces it's activating one of the abilities from the realm of the dead. This is the War Stomp, which shatters the ground and causes massive area damage. And we can clearly see that he remains confident, keeping his eyes locked on the enemies. The redhead, on the other hand, plays her banjo, forming a melodic connotation. The system reports that the archer has received a boost in her attack power, and she gives thanks. With that done, she fires arrows at all the other enemies to eliminate them quickly. Once again, the redhead uses her banjo skill to create another melody. It resonates within the protagonist, increasing his movement speed, and he amplifies it further by using the strength 100 legs. He then strikes swiftly at all the hands present with fast and fierce blows. To finish, he uses the cannon skill of the Faceless One. After the shot, a massive explosion can be seen, wiping out most of the monsters. Our boy says they need to hold on a bit longer so they can finish the mission written by the system. But suddenly, he looks back and senses an overwhelming killing intent aimed at his teammate. That teammate is the healer, who doesn't notice the enormous foot coming down to crush her. The gigantic creature then stomps hard on the ground to eliminate her. At that moment, we shift to another location, where someone has a sack over their head. A woman we already know calls out to the child while placing a hand on his head. Once she reveals his face, she asks if he understands the gravity of the crime he just committed. The blonde explains that they may be mercenaries of Ping Yan Chuan, but admits he was still wrong in the end and says fate has abandoned him. However, the redhead tells him it's actually the opposite of what he's thinking, because the real reason she called him was simply to give him a chance at revenge. She says that Uncle Ping and the protagonist slapped him harder than anyone ever had before and asks if he doesn't want to get even. But suddenly, a familiar voice says that he shouldn't force himself and should only say what the prophecy book tells him. And if he dares say a single unnecessary word, he'll make sure he never speaks again. The smoke begins to clear, and we see the monster's form still there. But the girl was able to defend herself with a shield and says that this is not good at all. She then reveals she won't be able to hold on much longer, so the other two need to attack the leg as fast as possible. The archer understands and says she'll follow the order. She then fires 2 Daedalus arrows at the monster. The strike is powerful enough to create 2 massive holes in the beast. However, they start to fill with flesh in a bizarre and almost supernatural way. 2 hands then emerge from the wounds, leaving everyone confused. Soon, the hands come together in a praying position, as if something is about to happen. Then we see that from all around the edges of the shield, many other limbs begin to appear. Our protagonist tells his friend not to remove the shield and to hold on for as long as she can. We soon see something strange within that object. A crack is forming in its center. The hands pry it open, revealing a demonic eye in the middle of the limb. Our protagonist realizes that this is an A-rank spirit, making it extremely dangerous in this situation. The creature sprouts wings to hover slightly and fires a beam of energy. It releases all the light toward the shield, attempting to break it. Our protagonist wonders if he can use the connection ink at that moment. Then the girl tells everyone to stop staring at each other. She thinks of something and uses her skill to summon the Guardian King in attack form. The creature then creates the equivalent of 5 shields to protect them from the overwhelming energy blast. Our protagonist knows that his friend won't be able to hold on much longer. With the vial in hand, he thinks he has no other choice but to use the connection ink. But suddenly, the sound of bells can be heard, bells that the protagonist immediately recognizes. The system then announces that energy is being detected and analyzed, and Qian Yi realizes it's the embryo. All the power is coming directly from its core, and the protagonist sees that it's being absorbed directly. Then we see the massive energy dissipating into a cloud of smoke. A person appears, and the system reports that all the energy was detected and absorbed, and the excess will now be released. Our young man is stunned by how much he has suddenly grown and questions how something like that is even possible. His companion, meanwhile, wonders who this child might be and why they seem to have no clear gender. But without any explanation, the little one directs an attack toward the monster, thus returning all its energy in the form of an extremely powerful strike. When the creature dissipates, our young man keeps staring at this figure, who then turns toward him and calls him Daddy. The blonde, sitting on one of the crates, thinks to himself that this is the only way. Both sides, the Assassin's Guild and Uncle Ping's group, will end up clashing and he'll die if he offends either one of them. So he has no choice but to make this difficult decision to ensure his own survival. We return to the realm of eternity, where our protagonist notices that the little girl doesn't remember where she came from. She only knew she had once been in the form of an embryo and was waiting for someone, but she can't recall clearly. Our boy asks if the girl knows anything about the black spirit named Error that she was protecting, to which she replies it was created by her to protect herself, made from a combination of several random evil spirits, but the system wouldn't allow her to name it anything other than Error. Our boy asks her to calmly think if she has any memory of the administrator, but his friend punches him in the face, telling him not to interrogate the child like that. They don't need to be scary. The girl says she doesn't remember. She only knows her name is number 1, and that within the internal code of the realm of eternity, she can access it quite easily. It's something as natural to her as a bird learning to fly or a fish swimming in the water. Our protagonist thinks she's not lying since the system had said she was analyzing things right before that enemy attack. She's probably some kind of artificial intelligence that collaborates with the administrator, but for some reason was abandoned and placed under his care. Soon, someone approaches and asks where the girl came from, to which the response is that it's a long story. Uncle Ping then says they'll talk on the way because there's something urgent they need to do immediately. The man is soon surprised to realize this person is the embryo he obtained in the White Dungeon. It's really strange, but since it's a product of the realm of eternity and can be stored in the inventory, it must be some kind of equipment. But the girl quickly shouts that she's not that kind of thing. She's a daughter given to the protagonist. The boy promptly changes the subject, asking where they're heading in such a rush. It's said that they're going to rescue Shang Wenyan, and he's asked who that is. The older man says he's the boy who left him alone in the dungeon, who ended up being captured by the Assassin's Guild and managed to send him a message. This group has a criminal scheme where they drug someone and release them when their remaining time is nearly depleted. Then they send the person to the realm of eternity, where they can be killed, ensuring no one finds out what happened. That way, from the police's perspective, it will look like an accident and the person responsible will never be brought to justice. The blonde was drugged, but he has some resistance and managed to send a message last night asking to be saved before anything worse happened. The old man apologizes for having to save someone like that, but they're close to discovering who the mastermind behind this guild is, and it seems to be connected to his sister. Moreover, the Black Eagle Guild is sending someone to assist them during the investigation. Our young man wonders who that might be, and it's said that in the end, it's no surprise, because in that place there's only one person who can be fully trusted among that pack of hyenas. Soon we cut to another location where an elevator has just arrived. The woman asks if he managed to get the information he needed. He says they'll arrive the next afternoon and asks how preparations are going. We then see the blonde still tied to a chair, realizing someone is approaching. Everything is ready, they just have to wait until they bite the bait, and the girl apologizes to him, telling the young man to simply do his part perfectly. Then she asks her ally what happened with the god of prophecy, who says everything is proceeding according to calculations and nothing is off with the prophecies. The woman begins to laugh with a smile wider than usual. With a psychotic expression, she declares that with this, she'll be able to obtain the power of one of the 8 gods known as Kars. This is an entity from another world beyond Earth, and at the end of times, he fought against other gods. Of them all, Kars and the King of Hell were the strongest. However, when everything ended, the very deity who rules over the realm of the dead imprisoned him, and his fragments were sealed in a place that exists nowhere. If they follow the prophecy and defile the area, she will be able to turn the entire city into a dungeon that leads to that place. Then, by sacrificing Qian Yi, she can use the energy to break the seal and summon Kars. The one behind the realm of eternity cannot allow this to happen and will certainly appear in the form of that creature's mask. Once that happens, they only need to use the Hell King's ability to devour other masks and consume Kars at that moment. She asks how the preparations of that person are going, which confuses the scientist. He soon remembers who she's referring to, but the woman stops him from saying the name at that moment. She then says that his presence is the key to winning this battle. They must go down to find the girl with the prophecy mask to check the current situation. But someone approaches, saying she doesn't need to do that for one reason. At that exact moment, the white cat delivers a message to the woman. They have just arrived in the afternoon, just as the prophecy foretold, and will begin their operations the following night. However, they must be cautious of our protagonist as his way of thinking goes beyond the scope and vision of the one who can see the future. With Kaini captured, they must retreat as quickly as possible to avoid prolonged battles. This cat is already ensured to mark Pingyan Chuan, so that person can follow the mark and hold him. The woman understands as they still aren't sure of this man's true strength. Soon after, we see our protagonist with his uncle at the airport. Then the older man says that the girl has finally arrived, catching the boy's attention. Ken Fee says they have no time to waste and must prepare the operation for the following night. We see the group gathered and the old man begins to go over each part of the plan again. First, they must rescue the person known as Shang Wenyang as the top priority. Second, they need to investigate how the members of the Guild of Assassins were able to act. And finally, they must not eliminate anyone unless absolutely necessary. Our protagonist then realizes that the city is filled with a heavy killing intent reverberating through the air. The old man says they're probably setting traps, so they need to be on full alert. Suddenly, our protagonist senses something coming from above, heading toward him. An enormous demon lands in front of him and attacks, but he manages to dodge. The boy realizes it's a dark spirit that has come directly to his location. The creature moves swiftly like flowing water, but Chen Fei uses his whisper ability to paralyze it. Our protagonist, noticing the creature's guard is down, says this is his best chance to eliminate it right now. However, someone suddenly appears and stops his attack with a single finger. The young man wonders what that was and widens his eyes. He questions who this coded person is and why they're so strong. He takes some distance, wondering who could generate such pressure and kill him intent. The older uncle says they must leave immediately. He will take care of that person, and there's no time for anything else. Both of them understand and retreat at incredible speed. The man asks the hooded figure to remove that disgusting hood because it's way too hot. The real reason he hasn't revealed his face is because he didn't want to create problems within the Black Eagle, but his cooperation with the Guild of Assassins is already obvious. He says he always let his ally stay by his side to ensure a fair duel when the time came, and slowly revealed his dirty actions. Then he calls the blonde man by name, and Kian. The man says he's using many sharp words and asks if he can explain the reasons why anyone should trust what he's saying. But the old man says those are filthy lies thrown to the wind because everyone has their struggles. However, the four-eyed man chose the worst path. With a smile, the man with glasses asks if they'll really have any choice other than to fight. To which the old man replies that he didn't come there to negotiate anything with him. Our protagonist and his friend arrive at the hotel and say they're going to take the elevator to rescue the person on the 18th floor. The young woman quickly presses the button as fast as she can, so they won't be too late. But suddenly, the entire place begins to shake, and our protagonist can feel an overwhelming murderous intent in that moment. And so he shouts that someone is holding onto the top of the elevator. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.